City Council for February 9th, 2015. We're starting a little bit late at 12 minutes after. We started at about 5:45 downstairs with in-camera things. If you're watching at home and you want to follow along in the agenda that we follow along at, look at onsound.ca, click on where you want to live, and then under that is council meetings, and that will get you down to the meetings under the tonight's date. After being in camera, we're moving into the regular meeting, and I'm starting with a faith blessing, which I understand is being provided by, there we go, Claire Miller. Thank you for coming.
You're welcome. Let us pray. Almighty God, you have given us this good city as our heritage. May we prove ourselves a people mindful of your generosity and glad to do your will. Bless our city with honest industry, truthful education, and an honorable way of life. Save us from violence, discord, and confusion, from pride and arrogance, and from every evil course of action. Make us, who come from many nations with many different languages, a united people. Defend our liberties and give those whom we have entrusted with the authority of government the spirit of wisdom, that there may be justice and peace in our city. When times are prosperous, let our hearts be thankful, and in troubled times, do not let our trust in you fail. We ask this through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Thank you. Are there any additional items tonight? Deputy Mayor Wright.
I have one, Your Worship, and it has to do with a sign on the Eddie Sargent Parkway.
Any others? Ms. Coulter.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to bring forward the minutes from Thursday, February 5th of the Community Planning and Heritage Advisory Committee.
Okay, thank you. Any others? Good, thank you. Move on to number 5, any disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. Seeing none. Number 6 is confirmation of minutes.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Thomas, that the minutes of the pre-budget meeting held on January 21st and 23rd as printed be adopted.
And all in favor? That's carried. Jim, 6B.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Kepke, that the minutes of the regular council meeting held on January 26, 2015 as printed be adopted.
All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Down to number 7.
And again, moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Gregg, that City Council now go into Committee of the Whole to consider public meetings, deputations, public question period, matters arising from correspondence, reports, matters tabled, motions for which notice was previously given, and other business.
All in favor? Good, carried. Thank you. Number 8, we are at a public meeting. Need a motion to adjourn the council meeting. Moved by Councillor McManaman. All in favor? Good, carried. I now declare the public meeting open. Announcement. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the Corporation of the City of Owen Sound before the bylaw is passed, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of the Corporation of the City of Owen Sound to the Ontario Municipal Board. If a person or public body does not make oral submission to a public meeting or oral written submissions to the Corporation of the City of Owen Sound before the bylaw is passed, the person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the Ontario Municipal Board unless, in the opinion of the board, there is reasonable grounds for doing so. Can commence the meeting. You're next, yeah.
Through you, Your Worship. Notice for this public meeting was circulated to the prescribed bodies, posted on the city's website, and posted in the Sun-Times on January 16th, 2015. The comments that were received prior to the agenda being published are included in the agenda package. Since the agenda was published, comments were received from Grey County and Dustin McGregor. These comments were circulated to council and the media and will be added to the agenda for the public's review. Those in attendance for the public meeting, please sign the sign-in sheet which is located just outside of council chambers. The personal information collected at this public meeting is collected under the authority of the Planning Act. The information collected will be used to complete the zoning bylaw amendment process and will form part of the public record. Questions about this collection should be addressed to myself.
Good, thank you. Ms. Coulter making the presentation.
Thank you, Worship. In June of 2013, Health Canada approved some new marijuana for medical purposes regulations. These new federal regulations to permit larger scale commercial MMPFs subject to federal licensing requirements similar to the federal control of narcotic production. So the Health Canada requirements, Health Canada licenses these producers. They control all production, packaging, labeling, loading. Each license specifies a quantity that can be produced with detailed, stringent security measures. There's requirements for air filters to prevent any odor as well as any pollen, and there's no retail sales component that's permitted. So Health Canada really does govern every aspect of production. Keeping that in mind, that MMPFs are federally licensed and regulated. There's a summary of the federal license requirements in Appendix A to the technical report, as well as the building and production security requirements. So those are appended to the technical report that Council had a few weeks ago. In terms of our process to date, staff attended almost a year ago a session held in Meaford to help us understand the federal requirements and the impact on local municipalities. In June, we did a presentation on MMPFs to our Community Planning and Heritage Advisory Committee. In September, there was a subsequent report on the land use implications of MMPFs. And then in December, Council received a technical report and directed that we prepare and give notice for a public meeting, which really brings us to today. So the focus for today's public meeting is really to hear input, and all this information, the technical reports and the information that has gone to Community Planning and Heritage is available on the city's website for anyone that's looking for further information. So the proposed amendment can really be divided into 7 parts. There's a definition of a medical marijuana production facility, and it's a facility used for growing, producing, testing, destroying, storing, or distribution of medical marijuana or cannabis by a producer licensed by the Federal Minister of Health under the Marijuana for Medical Purposes regulations. It's a fairly standard definition. In terms of permitted uses, the proposed zoning would be to permit an MMPF within the M1 and M2 zones within the city. There's a requirement in the proposed zoning that we separate an MMPF from other land uses that would be considered sensitive, and using the MOE guidelines, we're proposing a 70-meter setback from other uses. There's a restriction on open storage and display, and it's a general, we would add a general provision to restrict outdoor loading or display. So loading, again, there's a general provision that the loading happen inside. In terms of signage, this is federally regulated, but we would propose to amend both our sign bylaw and the city zoning bylaw that references the sign bylaw, just to make it clear to someone that didn't understand the federal requirements that there could be no outdoor signage. And lastly, site plan control would be required prior to the establishment of an MMPF. So the entire city is a site plan control area. In terms of reviewing the policy, we start with the provincial policy statement. The policy is issued under the authority of the Planning Act, and a decision that this council makes affecting a planning matter is to be consistent with those policies. The proposed zoning amendment to permit an MMPF within the industrial zone in an urban area on full services helps diversify employment uses, promotes opportunities for economic development, and is consistent with the policies of the PPS for growth and development of a strong community in Owen Sound. In terms of our official plan, the blue areas are what is considered employment lands. The predominant use of lands in these employment areas are to be manufacturing, assembly, fabricating, processing, packaging, printing, warehousing, and storage of goods. So the official plan description of these uses within that employment designation is certainly similar to that described by a medical marijuana production facility. The policies of the official plan has policies on employment uses that may have an impact on other uses. So there's policies that deal with parking, loading, lighting, and those types of things can be addressed at the time of site plan approval. But there's also a clause around separation from sensitive uses subject to provincial separation guidelines. So what that's referring to is the MOE has a policy D6, and it addresses the issue of land use compatibility between industrial and other sensitive land uses. So those would be things like existing residentials, daycares, churches. So under the provincial regulation, a medical marijuana production facility would be considered a Class 1 type facility. For those types of facilities, the MOE guideline recommends a 70-meter setback. In the technical report that Council received, we looked at what a lot of other municipalities have done in terms of separation. Some go with the 70 meters, some more, some less. What we're recommending in the bylaw for Owen Sound is a 70-meter setback. So more specifically, so we talked about the official plan. This is the zoning bylaw. So the lands in blue now are the areas that are zoned M1, light industrial, or M2, heavy industrial. And that's where it would be proposed that a medical marijuana facility would be permitted, subject to the other criteria. So on the right-hand side, you'll see the standard site and building regulations for an M1 use. And then you'll see that normally there's a 5-meter setback for a residential area, and it says CI below. So there's a minimum setback from sensitive land uses, and it's 70 meters. Normally in an M1, it permits a certain amount of retail sales, and here we say retail is not permitted. And then dealing with this, no part of the operation can be outside, and no outdoor storage and that type of regulation. So it's identical for M1 as well as in M2 in terms of the proposed zoning. So in terms of where we're at in the process today, February 9th, the focus for tonight is to hear any public feedback on the proposed zoning bylaw amendment to permit MMPFs in the M1 and M2 zone. Following this evening's meeting, our goal would be to bring back a report to council. The earliest date that would happen would be at your March 2nd meeting.
Good, thank you. You might as well leave that on, maybe the microphone. Just keep it simple. So this is a public meeting. This is your opportunity to speak to the zoning change that we're talking about. Does anyone wish to speak to it? No? Nobody? Going once? Again, I'll ask a second time if anyone wishes to speak to this in the public meeting. And just to make sure, I'll even ask a third time if there's anyone that wishes to speak to it. I see nobody moving to the microphone quickly or at all. So I guess we declare the public meeting closed. Well, I guess we don't guess. I guess I declare the public meeting closed. The next is the motion to reconvene the council meeting. Councilor McManaman? All in favor? Good, carried. Good. And next on the list is, number 9 is deputations. It's a fun night. I get to talk. I'm going to come down to the microphone. I believe I'm welcoming Blaine Courtney tonight. No plaques there. Sure, come on up. It's my pleasure this evening to congratulate the Owen Sound Emancipation Festival as they were the 2015 recipient of the Ontario Black History Society Harriet Tubman Award. The Harriet Tubman Award was presented to the festival organizers on January 25th in Toronto in recognition of their efforts to preserve and promote Canadian Black history. We're quite proud to have the Emancipation Festival running for over 150 years here in Owen Sound. In this August marks their 153rd anniversary. And I'm now calling on their chair, Blaine Courtney, to come forward and receive our certificate of recognition and appreciation and say a few words. So I'll give you that.
Thanks.
Thank you.
It's been a good 12 months. Lots of recognition. I really appreciate the city stepping in and recognizing the efforts of the festival. We're very proud to be known as the Owen Sound Emancipation Festival, and I always make sure that people are aware of that as a group we're very appreciative, like I said, of the fact that we have a city that has embraced for 153 years the Emancipation Festival as part of a core event within the city, and we certainly look forward to a long mutual association going forward from here. And I've met with some of the councillors already on certain things, and it's really great to know that everyone sort of has a very keen interest in making sure that the Emancipation Festival continues and is successful. So I thank you very much.
Oh, good. I thought I broke the camera. Our other celebration tonight, certificate. Tonight we also take an opportunity to honor one of our staff members. I'd like to call upon Nadia Daniluk to come forward. Nadia has been working with the Owen Sound and North Grey Union Public Library since 2007 as a youth services librarian. She's been involved in a number of changes and initiatives during her time in Owen Sound. Last month, she was named the Ontario Library Association's Youth Services Librarian of the Year. Please join me in congratulating and honoring Nadia as well as today. Do you want to speak? Perfect.
I have words. It has been a real honor to be acknowledged by my coworkers and library peers in this way, and to have that recognized by the City Council is really special. Thank you very much. I moved to Owen Sound 8 years ago to work at the library, and I don't think I could have asked for a nicer community or a better library to work in and be part of. Having a city and a council that both support and understand the importance of what we do at the library goes a long way to ensuring that we maintain a thriving and relevant institution. From books to film festivals, computers to open mic events, there really is something for everyone. And the 5,000 people who come through our doors every week really know this to be true. This is a real gem in our city that makes a difference in people's lives. If I could issue an invitation, Freedom to Read Week is celebrated February 22nd to 28th, and the library is inviting everyone to come and be photographed with a beloved book to demonstrate that our community supports the freedom to read. I hope that you will join us at the library. Thank you.
Got it. Oh, no. One more. Now you have your eyes closed. I had my eyes.
So we're down to 9C in the agenda, which is a presentation from the Art Gallery Board of Management with an update. Get you to turn that microphone on, Linda. Introduce yourself.
Thank you. My name is Linda Miles Gallinger, and I am the chair of the Tom Thompson Board of Management. Good evening, Your Worship, councillors, and city staff. Thank you for the opportunity to come before you tonight. Some of you will remember that last September we came to the council, we asked for and received approval for this motion, that in consideration of a report, oh, I'm supposed to turn this, sorry, that in consideration of a report dated September 2nd, 2014, from the Tom Thompson Art Gallery Board, City Council approves in principle having the Tom Thompson Art Gallery move out of being a division of the City of Owen Sound into a new charitable corporation on the basis described in the report, and with the willingness to proceed to negotiate the required agreements to make this happen. Since then, we've been busy. We followed up our presentation to Council with a public meeting in early October. In November, we initiated regular communication with the Friends of the Gallery. We do this by email and by letter. The Friends of the Gallery refers to the paid membership. In late December, we met with a small group of Friends of the Gallery. This group was comprised of mostly former Board of Management chairs and some longtime members. A few weeks ago, at the end of January, we hosted a meeting for our 350 members. At all of these meetings and through our communications, we have endeavored to provide accurate and timely updates. And now, we're back here to provide you with an update. Michael Warren, who's the chair of the Transition Committee, will provide an update of our activities. Then Rob McKinnon will talk about the Tom Thompson Art Foundation. On behalf of the Board of Management, I do want to thank the Mayor, the City Manager, for their help and direction. I also want to acknowledge the support of past mayors and councils. The Tom Thompson Art Gallery is an economic and cultural driver for this community. We want to strengthen those roles with an expanded gallery and a destination experience for this city. And with that being said, I'll invite Michael Warren to make his presentation.
Your Worship, just to begin with, this podium discriminates against people of height. As a matter of fact, I cannot see the screen, so my assistant, who is normal-sized, will help me through this presentation.
We'll put that on
with
the
your
list.
permission, Your Worship. Thank you. First of all, let me deal with the present. The gallery has no legal standing of its own. So people who have given art to the gallery think they're giving it to some entity that has legal standing, but it doesn't. We are a department of the city. The management board is not a governance board. It's a board that manages the managers. Managers do not vote for the board of management. The board is appointed by this council. So the director and the curator has a strange reporting relationship. She reports to three different sources. She reports to the management board, she reports to the city manager, and she reports to this council. And that, to some extent, is a little awkward for an organization that's now getting close to $1 million budget and fairly complex operation. The city is the legal owner of the art collection, and the gallery's role is to collect art, to make sure that we take care of it carefully and that we store it and show it as much as possible. And I will get to this issue of the art collection in a little while. Incorporation isn't something just in and of itself. We're incorporating to try to get ourselves in a financial position to be able to raise the funds for an expanded gallery. So it's a means to an end, it's not a means in itself. We think that at this stage, after some of the work we've done, that the gallery is contributing certainly to the city. It's been successful, but it's plateaued. And if we don't expand the gallery and really move to the next level, this gallery is going to start to lose its relevance and is going to start to decline in importance. We are about the halfway point of putting together a business plan and conceptual drawings and a variety of other things to bring to this council in the spring of this year. And one of the more central things that we're going to present to you is a business plan that covers 6 years. It addresses the operational and capital operations of the gallery. And we feel, and I think probably you feel, that that business plan has to be sustainable. It has to be one that is based on conservative assumptions. And it's the core of what we're going to do, what we're going to bring to you in the spring in order to get your support and to get community support to go forward. Slide. Our vision of the TOM of the future, one way to express it is our goal is to have the very best regional gallery in Canada, one with national reach and international reach. Putting it in a little bit more practical terms, we want to see this gallery go from its current role to a much more expanded role of being an economic driver and a cultural driver in this community. Let me give you a couple of figures that will give you some idea of the importance economically of the gallery in Owen Sound. Right now, the gallery generates about $2.3, $2.4 million in economic benefit for this community. The contribution that the city makes, in the range of about $300,000, is having an 8 times multiplier effect. If we expand the gallery the way we will come and present to you, we see that economic benefit rising to about $3.5 to $4 million. So what we have here is an entity that not only has some cultural value, much cultural value, but also is a serious economic driver in the community. Expressed it another way, if you go to the gallery today, you would probably, if you were coming to visit this community, you would experience about an hour to an hour and a half. Go through 2 or 3 small galleries, you would see the gift shop, may talk to a couple of people, and you would leave. And that's the gallery experience for the average visitor that comes here. I'm not talking about some of our exhibitions and special programs, just the average visitor experience. What we want to do is ensure that this expanded gallery gives this community at least an exceptional half-day experience. So this becomes a destination experience for the city. It's not that right now. If you combine it with some other activities in the city, it certainly is attractive. We want to make this at least a half-day destination experience. So that's another way of expressing what we want to do with this gallery. We need to make the gallery a much more inclusive place, much more participatory, much more accessible. Today, when you go to the gallery, you see a painting and you have an experience with that painting. We have no headsets. We don't provide people with iPads so that they understand something about the artist, something about beyond just the painting. We are really quite far behind in terms of an interactive experience with what people are seeing. We also want to be able, as a separate gallery, a not-for-profit gallery, to attract art that we can't attract now. We've had one Tom Thompson and a couple of Group of 7 paintings, which almost came to us in the last year, but didn't come here to us because the donors didn't feel that it was appropriate for their estates to give paintings to a city. And that's not all donors. Obviously, we've developed an art collection of over 2,600 pieces, but there are serious collectors who, like other funders, do not see it appropriate to give art to a city-owned gallery. We need more space for a variety of programs. We want to bring studio programs for adults and children. We want to bring Gallery Night at the Movies into the gallery. It's one of the more popular things. Right now we depend on times that the Galaxy or Roxy think are appropriate, but not necessarily appropriate for our audiences. We want to attract larger and more interesting exhibitions. And also, a huge audience today is online. And we have, I think, a very competitive website, but we're going to build a virtual gallery as well. And what we mean by that is a gallery that you can access online. You can have an experience that connects to the shows that are on at the time, and you can connect to the history of Tom. You can connect to, there's 2 films right now the National Film Board has produced. One's an hour long, another half-hour long. These are the sorts of things that we can make available to the online audience, which is one of the major audiences today for any enterprise like this. But again, I just direct your attention to the bottom of that slide. This depends on us being able to access a much more diversified capital and operating sources of funding. Sources of funding, and I'll get to those in a minute, that the gallery cannot access as a department of the city. Now, there's been some past attempts to expand the gallery. One not so extensive in 2006, but one in 2008 and one in 2012, and these were serious attempts to try to expand the gallery. And I'm going to show you some of the floor layouts in a minute so you get some idea of the history of this. This is not a new idea, is what I'm telling you. It's not a new idea at all. We've learned from both the Diemert and Moriyama proposals. They've allowed us to see what has been proposed in the past. And in the process, over the last couple of years, we've looked at different potential sites for this gallery. Just the other day, somebody suggested that maybe we should use the courthouse. The courthouse is 14,000 square feet, and the current art gallery is 14,000 square feet. So there's really not much benefit in that. And if we were to consider something like that, we'd probably have to maintain the facade, which is very expensive to do structurally, and then build a whole new art gallery behind it. So unfortunately, we've been through, I don't know, over the last 2 years, about 12 different buildings. There's been rumors around, is the gallery interested in going out to the Spit at Parish and Heimberger? And no, we're not. That was something that we looked at, and that was not something that bore any fruit. So the existing footprint that we have right now with the Rice Building, which is owned by the city and was made available for the express purpose of the gallery's expansion, that's the site that we plan to put together a proposal for you on. We've engaged a structural engineer to make sure that the site is capable of a 2- or 3-story building. The soil there is not great, and the water table's high, so we will make sure that we have a clear structural engineering opinion that we will provide to 2 firms. We've asked now formally the Diemert firm and the Moriyama and Toshiba firm to put forward proposals competing proposals to give us the conceptual plans for this expanded building. So we have their 2 proposals, we just received them, and we'll choose one of those 2. We've chosen these 2 firms. One is local, one is from away, and we've chosen them because they both had a history with the gallery. So like consultants, we don't want to pay for a whole lot of time for them to become familiar with what we're doing. They already are familiar with what we're doing. What we want from them are proposals, which we just received the other day, for the conceptual design for the new gallery. So we will choose one of those very shortly. Now I'd like to get into the slides that I'm going to go over to this layout here so you get some idea. This was 2008, and this was a design that basically put the collection in the basement, which we cannot now do because of insurance issues and issues associated with potential flooding. So this collection, at that time, it could go in the basement, expanded collection. Not a particularly efficient use of the site, but that was the basement. Next slide. This is the ground floor. There was a preoccupation with whether there should be a food service and a cafe that would join the library and the gallery, and that took up a lot of time and effort. The galleries would be increased, a south gallery, north gallery, and a new gallery here, multi-purpose room. Next slide, please. And then added to the north part of the building, the north part of the building being the newest part, additional space on the second floor. So that proposal brought the gallery up to 28,000 square feet, a doubling of the existing size. This is Mariana and Tashina. They proposed that, this is 2012, but this is not that far, not that long ago. They proposed a 35,000 square foot building, which is basically what we need. But they took up a whole lot of space here with trees and grass and so on, and yet
We've got a jar for you.
They took up a lot of space with a mini park here, and yet the gallery is right across the street from one of the nicest parks in town, so we don't have to spend all of this space on trees and grass. So here's the basement. Now, this portion here, most of this portion here, would be over the McCarroll land, which most of you are aware is north of the existing gallery. The McCarroll land, I'll repeat this twice, the McCarroll land is not available now, and apparently is not going to be available in the near future. So we can't go ahead with the assumption that the McCarroll land will be available. Maybe it will in some time in the future. So here is the envelope that we're looking at. It would be across here, up here, across here, and down here. So we would utilize all of this area here, which is not being utilized now, with this kind of plan, in a new plan. This, by the way, just go back one. This way I have Virginia on these. Go back one. This has, this is the first floor. One more. One more back. Well, I get everybody to use their imagination. Here we go. This is a theater in the basement, which structurally is fine, except that in our case, with the soil conditions and so on, this is not the place that we put it. But part of this new gallery will be a theater where we can make sure that people that are coming to the gallery see movies about Tom Thompson and the mystery and the excitement and so on about his life, something we can't do now. And run gallery night of movies in the gallery, bringing people to the gallery. This showed in the basement, again, the collections, much bigger area for collections, handling, and so on, storage. We can't do that in the new building. It will have to be up on the lawn to the first or second or third floor. We go to the first floor. And this showed increased gallery space, quite robust. The studio here, reception, but this new building will take that on the look. This is the next slide. And all they did of the second floor is just add this piece here. So I hope that gives you some idea of what work has been done in 2008, 2012. Now we're only 2 and a bit of years advance. Why didn't some of these happen? The first one didn't happen because the Rice House was not available. The Rice House was to be used for hospital residents, and that took priority over the expansion of the gallery. This one didn't happen because the Carroll land wasn't available. So there was serious attempt to put this together. When the McCarroll land wasn't available, the previous board went looking for other sites. We've looked at all those sites, and we're back to this one here. Now, I want to spend some time on the business plan and some of the issues. First of all, government funding of arts and museums and so on is not expanding. It's stagnant at best. And there are more and more agencies chasing the same amount of money. So the future here of financing for the art gallery is certainly with some government funding. We're certainly going to continue to go after government funding. But the long-term future is more private funding. And there's been some successes already from this gallery. It's got a very diverse income stream, actually. As you see in this slide later on, we've reduced the burden, if you like, or the investment of the city from 40% of the total revenue of the gallery in 2008 down to 28% last year. So we are becoming increasingly independent, if you like. We have to do more of that. We have to broaden that. We have to show in the business plan that we can access specific areas of capital and operating funding. We're going to give examples of other galleries that are doing that are accessing foundations, they're accessing public and private sources of funding that we can't access right now. Let me give you a couple of examples. The Trillium Foundation, which you're all familiar with, we cannot apply and get money from the Trillium Foundation because we are a city department. We can't get money from the Jackson Foundation. They provide very generous supports to many galleries around the country, around Ontario. When I was the chair of the gallery 10 years ago, we tried to get money from the Jackman Foundation, and we're unsuccessful. Some banks will not provide us with funding because they don't fund municipalities. Sun Life, Manulife, law firms in Toronto and elsewhere, Investors Group, Ontario Power Generation, the list is about 3 times as long as that. So these are all sources of operating and capital funding that we cannot access now. So we've reached that plateau of financing and really can't go any further without having the gallery as a separate not-for-profit corporation. And the business plan will give you examples of where we can find additional funding, what galleries are doing that. So it's not our opinion, it's the experience of other galleries in this field. We're going to use conservative visitor and membership numbers. We're going to include in the business plan the future use and cost of city services. We're going to make reasonable assumptions about the contribution that we'll be asking for in the capital program from the federal government, from the province, from the county, and the city. And we'll make reasonable assumptions also in the plan about ongoing financial support, operating support. Other comparable galleries that we are looking at, let me see, Ottawa, maybe Hamilton, the Barrie Gallery, the Grimsby Gallery, the McLaughlin Gallery, they all are experiencing between 40 and 70% support from their cities. And we're at the stage where we're at about 28%, and we think we're doing a relatively good job in partnership with the city. So when you look at some of these other galleries, they are accessing some funding we can't access, but they're also showing a pretty substantial reliance on their cities and municipalities. We're also going to present to you some economic measures, some proxy measures, economic proxy measures for the impact of the gallery. I mentioned a few of those earlier. Also, the business plan, the capital campaign itself and the cost of the new gallery will be based on the estimates that we get from the successful architect and from the conceptual plans that they put forward. So we'll have a pretty solid idea of what that new gallery will cost, and we'll have floor plans, and we'll have renderings to use in discussion with you and also in raising money in the community. I want to spend just a couple of minutes on this issue of the art collection because I think it's important to talk about how we would propose to protect that collection. The transfer of the ownership of the art collection from the city to the gallery would be under conditions, strict conditions that would be set out in a trust agreement. And that trust agreement would provide a number of performances that the gallery must undertake. And if they don't undertake those performances, the legal and beneficial ownership of the art would revert back to the city. So what would some of those be? We have a draft agreement that we'll be sharing with you in our report. The gallery has to remain in the city in perpetuity. The art collection has to remain in the city in perpetuity. There would be a prohibition against selling any of the art unless the sale of the art was to buy other art that's more appropriate for the gallery. There'd be city representation on the board as long as there was a partnership between the gallery and the city that was meaningful. And if the gallery for some reason got wound up, got into serious financial trouble and so on, then the failure to perform on any of these things would mean that the beneficial and legal ownership of the art collection would revert back to the city. So we think this is a reasonable way of protecting the interests of the city, protecting the interests of the people in this community who've been part of putting this collection together over many years. Now this venture, like so many that are meaningful, is not without risk. So the mayor is telling me to move along, so I'll do that. There's cons and there's pluses. You've all read this. Should I move on to the next slide, George? There are some cons. The most serious one here is if we don't, in 2 or 3 years after we open this gallery, and we don't have a business plan that's really robust and that you're convinced and we're convinced will work, then what could happen, it happened in London, Ontario, is that we could end up coming back to the city and back to the community for more money beyond what we think is reasonable. And that, I think, is probably the biggest negative. And the loss of guidance and oversight from the city and the council, I think, is another negative. This city should be proud of what it's done with this gallery. I mean, it has a jewel of a gallery with 2,700 pieces of art, and you've accomplished a lot. What we're talking about here is going to the next level. So the pros deal with some of those, the advantages, and more diversified sources of funding, a chance to build an expanded gallery, a destination experience for the city, and it creates, I think, some clear rules about the ownership of the art and the protection of that art. There are a few other things that we have yet to put together, and we're working on those, and this is a list of them. One of them is we have to try to find a way to ensure that the gallery gets comparable pensions and benefits if there's a transfer to an independent organization. We need to make sure we get the right governance model. The wrong governance model can create some real problems longer term. We need bylaws. There is a quiet campaign underway right now, capital campaign, and Rob McKinnon is going to talk to you about the foundation and its activities. And there's future consultation with our members and with the public, and then back to this council in the spring. Thank you, and sorry to go so long. And now let me introduce Rob McKinnon, the chair of our foundation. Rob.
Okay, Rob, so you have the remainder of Mr. Warren's 10 minutes.
Well, I guess I'll say goodbye.
You may have to talk in reverse.
I'll be fast.
Okay.
The Tom Thompson Art Foundation was formed 4 years ago with the approval of Mayor and Council. It was established to do 3 things: access funding sources that we can't do as a city department, assist in an inventory of privately owned Tom Thompson paintings across the country. No such list exists. And to establish some national support for the Tom. To do all this, we needed charitable status. I'm going backwards. Sorry, Virginia. We needed charitable status, and we applied for it. There we go. And we were turned down. Revenue Canada rightly pointed out that a charity can't support a municipality. So we've been on a bit of a holding pattern. In the meantime, we're following up. Again, I'm doing something wrong here.
See why I have Virginia now.
There we go. Oh, move it sideways, don't push it. We have 5 members at the moment. Don Johnson is our treasurer. Virginia from the gallery is our CEO. I'm the chair at the moment. Linda Miles Gallinger, who is the chair of the Tom Board, is with us, and Errol Treslin. We have several honorary trustees right across the country. They include this list. You can read that for yourself, but it goes right from Vancouver, where David Cohen works, to Senator Don Oliver, who is in Halifax. And we've had person-to-person meetings with those folks, and the foundation board and the honorees have all met in Toronto at the Olga Corporate Art Gallery. Most of them, in fact, came and had an evening with us. I've had several in-person meetings with these honorees, and they have all indicated that they are willing to help us in any of those three things: bring in money, assist with the inventory, and bring in Toms. We have also met with a professional fundraiser, and we are prepared to set up a capital campaign. I want to leave you with a couple of real-time facts. The first of which is we have a present-day offer of a painting when the Tom has been incorporated and has charitable status. Just a black and white fact. Michael alluded to the fact that in the fall we lost 2 A.Y. Jackson paintings that were in the pipeline to come to the Tom, and as soon as they heard that the receipt was coming from the City of Owen Sound, they backed out. The other, I think, important information is that we've had pretty solid advice from an honorary trustee outside the City of Owen Sound, outside the province, in fact, who has said categorically any support in any way, shape, or form is contingent on your status as a charity. I think we're ready to answer questions.
And does anyone,
We have some.
Councillor Lemon?
Fire away.
Yeah, one question. We've established that the current collection is the property of the City of Owen Sound in the care of the Tom Thompson Management Board. Why do we need to change the status of the existing collection? I can understand new acquisitions, but the existing collection, why do we need to change its status from being owned by the city to being owned by the, sort of owned by the foundation? And I say sort of because there's residual rights to the city.
Well, if you're going to have an art gallery, you want to have a collection that you have some control over. And I think that the fundamental purpose of the gallery is the management and the storage and the display, if you like, of the collection. So it's one alternative. You could do it that way. I guess people would look at the gallery and then say, well, is the gallery really separate from the city? Or is there some arrangement here that still has the city controlling parts of the gallery? If that's the case, then are we able to access all of these sources of funding? Or do we have yet another iteration of what we have right now?
Well,
So
at the present time, we do have some paintings that are on loan to us, some of
Yes.
those are on permanent loan. So the real status wouldn't change, because right now, for instance, the city manager does not tell the head of the art gallery that there's some restoration work that needs done on this Tom Thompson painting. I'm
I
quite
think,
sure
Peter,
that's the
question
last
would really
thing.
be whether CRA and donors to the gallery, both financial and in terms of art, would see the gallery as an independent entity that control over all aspects of its operation. If it didn't own the collection and there was elements of reporting relationships and so on associated with the collection, then I don't know what the CRA decision would be. I don't know whether donors, both financial and otherwise, would see the gallery as an independent entity. So I think the option that you talk about is there. There's all kinds of options. That's not the one we'll be proposing.
Can I just add that we've looked at 3 different situations where it's happened, in Calgary, in Ottawa and Toronto, where the city turned over the art gallery in a trust agreement, and that facilitated a whole lot more funding and artwork coming in. It seems to make the situation better for just generically as a gallery, rather than being part of the city.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Oh, sorry, Deputy Mayor Wright. I forgot.
Thank you very much for the report. I have a better understanding of the city, the art going under a trust agreement, and I'm quite sure that that would be well vetted by our lawyer and lawyers so that the city would know. But then you made a statement that has me puzzled, and you said, I believe, that you could sell a piece of that city art to buy another piece of art. So if we give you the art in trust, how could you sell it?
Well, you have to be careful that the trust agreement doesn't completely bind the hands of a gallery that may end up getting a piece of art that is not in any way consistent with the Tom Thompson vision, if you like, is outside of our area of interest, and that could be sold, but only to raise money for other art that we really wanted to have as part of the gallery. The trust agreement is something that we have an outline of it. The city might say, well, we don't like that provision, we'd like it to be tighter. But there needs to be some flexibility in the gallery. What that flexibility would be, I think, gets down to lawyers dealing with lawyers. But the idea that we're trying to bring forward tonight is that one way to protect the art, to protect the city and the public ownership of the art, is to make sure that the gallery has to abide by the sort of provisions I put out there, and if it doesn't, the art reverts back to the city. So, you might decide that you want to put a total prohibition on any sale of the art in the trust agreement. That would be your prerogative to do that. Okay. We would probably put something slightly more flexible in there, but now we're negotiating the trust agreement.
Okay, that's fine. And just when you're talking about the funding, and I think you did give some examples of funding, that there would be, it's private sources basically, yes, that the funding would be coming from.
Well, one public source would be, an example of a public source would be Trillium. I mean, we've been trying to get Trillium grants way back 10 years ago, and they said, no, we don't give Trillium grants to cities. So the examples I gave you were private foundations, public foundation, not for art purposes.
Oh, not for art, because
right,
we have.
There's other Trillium grants.
There are Trillium
yes,
grants that have come to the
they won't do that for
projects.
art purposes.
Yes,
because
okay,
this relationship has been successful, but it's one of the few in Canada where a city actually has a department, and the department is a gallery. This is not the norm. This is the exception.
Okay, well, there's 54 municipalities in Ontario that all have art galleries.
Mm-hmm.
How many of those, would you have any idea how many of those art galleries would have anything to do with the municipality?
Well, they all have something to do with the municipality, but in terms of ownership, having the gallery as a department of the city, I think probably there's only 2 or 3 out of all those. And all those cities do not have art galleries, by the way.
Well, I mean, 54 communities in Ontario do have an art gallery connected as their, like, Kitchener-Waterloo Art
Yes.
Gallery, London Art Gallery, and
Rob just gave 3 examples or 2 examples
right,
of art galleries that were owned. Ottawa, for example, the
right,
Ottawa Art Gallery was owned by the city and was a similar relationship that we have here. It's just recently moved away, same way as we're proposing here to get more funding. What was the other one you were using?
Mocha in Toronto, same deal.
well,
It was
Toronto,
part of
those are, what about
North
smaller communities? Do you have
Well-
any idea of smaller communities?
I-
Sorry, the
Wait.
Grimsby Public Art Gallery, for example, that is a full-on department of the city. It gets about 75 to 80% of its funding from the municipality.
I see.
So there are a lot of art galleries that are within municipalities, and that may even actually carry the name of the municipality, but they are not necessarily a department of the city, and that's where it gets a little more complicated.
Okay, I was just curious about that. And
This is pretty much the exception, not the only exception, but it's very rare that you have a gallery of any significance or size like this one that is still a department. I mean, to some extent, what this city has done is birthed this gallery for the last 30 years with a lot of volunteer help and so on. And now it's at a stage where we're saying it's plateauing. And unless we really address this in some creative way, this gallery is not going to expand beyond where it is now.
Okay, thank you very much for answering my question.
Councillor Dodd?
Well, first, thanks for doing that. That's very exciting to see that this is going on in the community. It's kind of nice to actually look at that and say how it's going to be a lot more interactive on basically with social media and through finding a new approach of how to make art more accessible for younger individuals who may not have a grasp on it. I know we've all visited the art gallery recently, and there's some arts that are there that blow my mind. I'm also colorblind, so when I stare at it, I have no idea what's going on. But my question here is what you brought up. It said a meaningful contribution. I know this was brought up in the public meeting as well. I'm just wondering if you'd be able to elaborate on that for the city to do a meaningful contribution to maintain.
I think, Travis, we're going to do that in the business plan, and I think we'll bring the plan forward first to our next boss, which is the city manager, and we'll be sitting down with the city manager and saying, here is a draft report to council. Let's discuss this. Let's go through this issue and many others that are there, and then hopefully get some agreement and then bring forward the full plan to council. So this is a fairly complex process, and we're not coming forward with some simplistic ideas here. This needs to be well done. You need to have confidence in the end. The major thing you need to have confidence in is that there is a 6-year plan here, starting this year through to 2020, that makes sense, that's deep, that is robust, and that you, from the point of view of long-term confidence in us doing what we say we're going to do, is there, and that's what we're going to do. That's what we're going to present to you. So some of the issues about trust agreements and so on will also be discussed, but I think I suggest to this council that the community and this council needs to have from us a business plan that really makes sense and that you can have confidence in going forward. It has been well put together, and it's not what we say, it's what other galleries are experiencing and what the real world is all about. So.
Okay. Councillor Kepke?
Thank you so much for your presentation. It's a couple times I've heard it now, and it's done very well, and I look forward to the business plan, of course. But you mentioned about going to Grey County, and I'm hoping you'll include other surrounding municipalities in that. I'm sure your membership isn't all from Owen Sound. And at what time would you go to Grey County? After your business plan is done and when your foundation is looking to seek capital funding?
I think what we would do is we would share with you, obviously in the business plan, the capital plan, and a time frame, what requests we're going to make from different levels of government, including the county. And you're right, this gallery is already a regional entity, and if you look at the membership, it's about 50-50 Owen Sound, maybe a little bit more actually outside of Owen Sound, maybe 60-40 people outside of the city of Owen Sound in this region, and the remainder in the city. So we're cognizant of that. I had some experience in the rec center campaign about trying to get other municipalities involved, and maybe we can be successful in that respect. So we understand what you're saying, and that'll be part of the plan.
Thank you.
Councillor Thomas.
Through your worship, I was at the public meeting October the 2nd, and I want to commend you on what you've brought forward here to us tonight. I think that had we had a lot of this at that public meeting, it might have been a different kind of a meeting. But what I'd like to ask, you did allude to the fact that you have met with the people who were perhaps surprised by this idea at that October meeting, and I'd just like to know what your conversation has been like with them. Is my phone going to start ringing tomorrow morning?
Well, it might. I can't guarantee that. I might call you tomorrow morning, find out how we did tonight. We have, I thought we had a good meeting. I think you have to ask them. But I think we had a good meeting, and Michael Milhausen, who's a former chair, was their representative, and there's several people here tonight who are with that group that came to us. Neil Devlin was part of that group, and he's now going to join our board, and Neil has great background in the city and in the business aspects of this city. So we think that we've done pretty well. We also, of course, are responding to our whole membership. It's fine to have an ad hoc group come and talk to you, but our membership would like to be informed fully all the time as a full membership. So that meeting was very helpful, and I think we've been told that that group is going to monitor our business plan, and I'm sure many others will. So we welcome that, and we welcome Neil to our board, and we're really excited.
Okay. Councillor McManaman?
Thank you, Your Worship. I guess one of the benefits of going last is all the questions have already been asked by my colleagues, so excellent. The only comment I would make, an exciting proposal for sure. Obviously, the business plan is the make or break discussion as far as council, I believe, will be concerned. And my question is, why a 5-year business plan? Why not a little longer term, 10 years?
Well, all the tables right now that are developed program by program and summarized go from 2014, so we have a base year, to 220. I guess you could extend it beyond 220 if you wanted to, but the gallery is probably going to open, the new gallery, about late 2017, early 2018. We're going to try to get it open at the end of 2017. So then you have 18, 19, and 20. So you have several years of the gallery being in full, new gallery being in full operation. If you want to extend it beyond that, I know there's businessmen on this council, after you get past about 3 or 4 years, you're starting to get into sort of la-la land, and what we'd like to do is have this business plan really anchored in experience of other galleries and solid projections. So, you know, if you like, we could have a look at, when we discuss it, we could have a look at another year, but I'm not sure that another year is going to tell you what will really happen. The core years here are the ones just leading up to the new gallery, the construction period, the new gallery, and then 3 years after that. And that has to be brought up to date. You would hear the business plan updated next year. So updated next year, Councilman McManaman would take us into 2021. This is not a static thing.
And just maybe further to Councillor Dodd's question, so it is your assumption you'll be coming back for an increase in the operating budget and a contribution to the capital campaign?
Well, I mentioned we've come down from 40% to 28%. We don't see major increases we might say that inflation is important, but we're not seeing major increases. And with respect to the capital side, the city owns the building and the land, and presumably that would make a tremendous contribution to the capital side of things. So I don't see us coming here with a great burden. I see us coming here and saying, here's an investment opportunity, and do you want to take it, and can we work with you on it? This is really an investment in taking the economic impact of this gallery from a couple $1 million a year to $3 or $4 million a year. And I think, you know, I've been on the Economic Development Committee for 10 years. I was chairing it for 3 or 4. And this is the kind of activity that we have to get into to make this city grow. We need growth. And this is not risk-free, but we'll try to minimize the risk in our plans.
Thank you.
Councillor O'Leary?
Michael, how do you determine how much money you're looking for from the city? You mentioned a professional fundraiser. Do you go to that professional first and to your donors first and see how much you can come in and then come to the city, or do you come up with a number that...
Well, we've had a long track record of, I mean, this is a city department, so you can go back into the history of 2013, 14, and so on, and you'll see that the amount of overall funding that the city has contributed to the gallery is around $300,000 a year. It's about $285,000, and then there's some city services that are provided. That was more than that 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, so it's coming down, and the city's been pushing us to go out and get more funding from other sources. And we've done that from 2008 to last year. Now what we're saying is we can't access a whole lot of sources of funding that will not contribute to the gallery as long as it's owned by the city. This is not the regular relationship that galleries have. They're usually on their own, not-for-profit organizations. They're not city departments. So what we're saying is let us go out, let us incorporate, let us go out, get these sources, and for a period of time we'll need some transitional funding, but I'm saying it's not going to be anything exorbitant. We'll be reasonable about it, and I think that's something that we want to talk about through the business plan. But in my answer to Councilman McManaman, we're not looking for any significant increase in the operating funding for the next 5 years.
So we'll ask to Councillor Kepke.
Just a quick comment. Is there not a significant anniversary coming up of Tom Thompson? And
There
can you
is.
tell us when that is?
There is. 2017 is the centenary year, and that's going to be an interesting year. The gallery right now is very successful in off-site programming. Actually, the attendance, there's more attendance now off-site than there is on-site. The on-site attendance is important. So in that year, because we're going to have construction going on, and at the end of that year, the celebration will be opening a new gallery, we're going to have a lot of off-site programming that is already being planned right now in this community and beyond. We're taking portions of the collection and putting shows together that will travel, and we're going to be partnering with other entities in the city to allow us to be part of their presence while we're under construction. So that's all going to be in the business plan and spelled out in some real detail.
Okay, I'm going to wrap up, Councillor Lemon. Thank you. Thank you very much. If I've got this right, business plan will be the next thing that will come to the city, and we'll accept it or not accept it. Thereafter, we're looking at a trust agreement to protect the art.
I think that, Your Worship, that the trust agreement would be part of the whole package. The final recommendations will include the business plan, the bylaws, how we would incorporate. It would include also the plans that we'd have, which we're going to work on over the next month to make sure that the staff ends up with some of their benefits.
So the 5 conditions
so
that were
there's
set.
5 or 6 different elements to the plan. The major element is the business plan, and this will be a robust report that comes to you with all of those elements in it. And before we come to council, we will sit down with our current boss, who's been very supportive, the city manager, and go through this. We're still a department of the city, so we have to sit down with the city and go through this at the staff level, and then we will come to council with what we hope will be something that excites you and also gives you some comfort.
Good. Thank you very much.
Can I add one short note? The federal government, through the Canada Council and other agencies, have done reporting and done so to the director of the TOM. The provincial government, through the Ontario Arts Council, all of which has indicated that the status quo sort of doesn't cut it anymore. And not only will your funding be reduced, it may be cut right off if you don't, if you do things as you have been doing them. You need to become more relevant. You need to be much more in tune with your community, a much more of an economic driver. So from the foundation standpoint, I think it would be good for you to all challenge us. How do we get better? How do we become more of an economic driver so that we think we can actually perhaps increase some of our provincial or federal grants because of this impetus?
Good.
So challenge us some more.
Good. Thank you, Ms. Miles Gallinger. Thank you, Mr. Warren, and Mr. McKinnon. Thank you for your presentation. And your 10 minutes is up now. Good. Next thing on the agenda is number 10, public question period. Any public questions? Okay, perhaps if there's anyone. Oh, yep. Yep, please. Okay, you state your name. You help her there, Matt? We're okay? Go ahead.
Dina Henry. I live for the next 2 weeks at 6th Avenue East. I think that's it.
Yeah, okay.
Others here probably know better than me at this point. Yep. The reason I want to, I don't have a question, but I do have a desire to express my deepest gratitude to the previous council that I became very involved in working with, and I'm moving back to the big city, Ottawa, in a couple of weeks, and probably will never be back up here again. And I just wanted to express gratitude that this city afforded me a life up here that I never thought I would have again. In the 3 years, I became very involved and interested in the city functioning, and became involved in the disability advisory and a member of the board, housing board, and several other things. And I just wanted to thank the people that I worked with over the last 4 years, for this opportunity.
Ms. Henry, I think we can turn that on you. We want to thank you. We didn't know you were leaving. You put in one heck of an effort and had a lot of passion for this city, and at times you pushed us and made things better and different, and you can say that you did that yourself, frankly. You did.
Thank you.
And it's appreciated when people are that passionate and help move us forward, and we hate to see you go. Thank you very much to you, too.
Thank you. Just one little comment. When I moved up here, I was known, or became known, as the little disabled sister, or younger, not little, disabled sister of Glenn Henry, who was very well known for many years here. And because of my involvement in the city, it was a wonderful experience to finally be considered or talked to as, oh yeah, don't you have a brother named Glenn that worked for the city?
Yep.
I became known for myself, and that was a wonderful experience for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So we're at 11A, which is correspondence received, which we need direction. 11A is a correspondence from Myrna Inglis, Chair of the Bruce Gray MedLinks Committee, requesting financial support. Councillor McManaman.
Thank you, Your Worship. While we support the goals of this committee, I don't think we have the funding for this, so I just move that we receive the correspondence.
Okay, Councillor Kepke.
Just a comment, I don't know if anyone is here regarding this correspondence or not, but if you're listening at home, perhaps one of the avenues you could use is the Community Foundation Grey Bruce. They have a granting process at the end of March that this may fit some criteria, and there may be some funding assistance available there.
Thank you. So the motion is just to receive. All in favor? Great, thank you. Next one, 11B, correspondence from Royal Canadian Legion requesting purchase of Veteran Support Remembrance ad in the Military Service Recognition Book. Councillor McManaman.
Thank you, Your Worship. Same motion. I think we would support this, but we don't have the funding at this time.
And Councillor Lemon.
Agreeing with that motion, this is actually from Ontario Command. It's not from the local Legion, and that does make a difference.
Okay, I'm going to have a comment in a minute. Anyone else in this? All in favor tabling this? Receiving, sorry, my poor choice of words. In the past years, when we get to budget, we look at, I think it falls under something called grants. And in the past, we have not set up a fund for grants for these types of things. And yet we get the correspondence, and in the past, we've brought it to council. When we go to look at the grants, I want council to consider whether we should be, you still want these requests coming when we don't have funding, or we do an automatic reply at that point that we don't have funding. But for now, because we really haven't got to that point in the budget, we've got new council, I've been bringing these onto the list. Councillor Lemon.
Well, to me, Your Worship, if a letter is addressed to the council of the City of Owen Sound, it should go to the council.
Well, we'll discuss that when we get there. I just want you to think about it.
Yeah, it's just a matter of it's
opinion.
addressed
Good.
to council.
Thank you. 11C is correspondence from Chairman Garth Pierce of the Owen Sound Police Services with regard to compensation. I think we have to do something there.
Oh.
Do you want to? Deputy Mayor Wright?
I think Councillor McMahon. The police board requested this to do so. It's up to the to the council to provide remuneration for police service members. So we're not making any change whatsoever. It's the same as it has been in the past, except if you don't attend, you don't get paid. So I suggest that we follow through with this, so I'll make a motion that we enact what the police board has requested.
Councillor McManaman?
Thank you, Your Worship, and I can't remember where we asked, but I thought we'd asked for an opinion, I'm not sure if it's a legal opinion, on whether we had to provide compensation or whether it was just common or past practice.
I believe it's in the Police Services Act that members from, that are appointed by the Lieutenant Governor of their provincial appointments must be paid by the municipality. And then we have a public member that's on there that we would assume, because they're a public member, would be treated the same. The difference, two differences. One is that by this motion, then it's not an automatic monthly thing that if you don't show up, you get paid anyway. And number two, the councillors, because we went from per diems to attend meetings and got paid per diems over there at the police board, that because we're paid straight payment here at the city, that the councillors would not be paid per diems to go as well. So that was.
But either way, we don't have an option of not paying these people, even if we didn't want to.
Correct.
Okay. Oh, then, fair enough.
Yeah, correct. Go ahead.
Just as a matter of information to the council, the police board went over the, got a list of what other communities paid out, and we are just average or a little below average. For instance, the municipality of South, no, it's not South Bruce Peninsula, it's the town of Southport. They pay almost $700 to theirs. So this is a very reasonable, fair and reasonable.
So any other comments? All in favor of that motion? Good, carried. 11D, correspondence from Roger DeGanis, Head Traffic Operations Minister of Transportation, with regard to default speed limit. Councillor McManaman.
Thank you, Your Worship. I was going to comment that we should send this to operations for consideration, but their next, they need an answer by February 27th, so that doesn't give enough time for that. I'm wondering if we could just provide no comment, or I'm wondering if Mr. Becking has any comment on this subject.
Your Worship, as the correspondence states, the Highway Traffic Act sets out, and the Municipal Act sets out the speed limit in an urban area or a built-up area, as the Act defines it, at 50 kilometers an hour unless posted otherwise. The implication being that the instant you deviate from the standard policy of the Act, the municipality then becomes responsible for signing those differences. And the signage can get quite expensive because there's some very specific requirements with respect to how frequently signs have to be posted. I'll give you a practical traffic engineer's interpretation. If the Act were changed to 40 kilometers an hour, frankly, nobody would pay any attention to the signs, and you wouldn't be able to enforce it anyway. The 50 kilometer an hour speed limit, in my view, is an appropriate balance between the need to move traffic and the need for public safety. If the council is concerned about safety, certainly we can respond recommending that they proceed with the change. My suggestion to council would be to, if they are going to implement the change, leave it to the discretion of the municipality as to whether to adopt that or not, a lower speed limit or not.
Good. Okay, Councillor sorry, Councillor McManaman, are you done there? Sorry.
Well, I was just going to say that is one of the options on the list, that we leave it up to the municipality whether it's 50 or 40.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll move a motion that the City of Owen Sound maintain the current default speed limit of 50 kilometers an hour. And in certain areas, if the case warrants, there is opportunity through the Highway Traffic Act to lower the speed limit in certain areas.
And we do have areas in the city that are at 40 kilometers an hour.
Correct.
That's correct, and typically it's in conjunction with places where children are typically found, so school zones and parks and the like, and certainly staff would strongly support that kind of an approach.
I was going to ask Councillor Kepke if she wants to reword her motion.
Reword it to,
So I think you threw in that it was leaving it at 50. Do you want to just say leave it as is?
leave it as it currently is stated in our municipality.
Ms. Bloomfield, makes sense? Okay. Any other, thank you. Any other questions or concerns? All in favor? Good, carried, thank you. Down to 12, which is reports, Deputy Mayor Wright.
Could I ask that we move 12C3 forward so that our consultant is not kept here till the end of the night?
So we're going to jump out of order for minutes, boards, committees to, what did you say, 12C3?
Yes.
Which
the
is the minutes from the
charges
Development
minutes.
Charges Study Committee.
And I would like
meeting.
to speak to it. Your Worship.
Everybody agrees to moving it forward now? Good. Go ahead.
I'm very concerned that we're dealing with development charges now, and we haven't had a look at the capital budget. I think the capital budget has an awful lot to do with what we do with development charges. I have no idea, none of us have any idea yet what the needs are in capital, and so I find it very difficult to talk about development charges when I don't know what the needs are in capital. And I would like to see us deal with the capital budget, and then following the capital budget on Friday, then deal with development charges at that time, or we could do it at March 2nd. This report doesn't have to go in until the 11th of March, is my understanding, so we have time to do it. So I am requesting that we table these minutes until Friday after the capital budget meeting.
Before we go any further, I'm going to go to Ms. Corsi. Does it work Friday? Is it better on the next meeting being March 2nd, which I know puts pressure on? Or second budget meeting?
If I could, Your Worship, we could bring this to the March 2nd meeting for further discussion.
The 18th would be fine. The 18th would be
The
great.
2nd.
Oh, the 2nd, of March?
Of March. That would be the next regular council meeting.
That's fine.
Okay, so your motion is to
Table this until the 2nd
until the 2nd of March. Councillor Kepke, I think, had her hand up next.
Just a question, does the bylaw not have to be passed by the 11th of March? So when would we have an opportunity after March 2nd to pass the bylaw?
Through you, Your Worship, to Councillor Kepke, we'd have to pass that evening.
On March 2nd.
I just think it's difficult to discuss it and pass a bylaw without knowing what's going to be in the bylaw. I would like to see it discussed sooner.
Councillor O'Leary?
The flip side of that is if we chose to have a holiday with the development charges, we need to know that before the budget because we'd have to make up for the money. So if we're going to miss out on $70,000 in income from development charges, we need to find that in the budget to make up for that. And I just wanted to comment too, I sat in on this meeting and I'm not on the committee. I had to sit there and keep my mouth shut, which I had a hard time doing. But I wanted to commend Councillor Thomas on his motion to send the development charges on the residential side for a holiday, and to Councillor Lemon for supporting it. But one of the committee members in voting against this motion mentioned that he can't support this for such a small number of people. And I would suggest that the number of people that are working in the construction industry in this community is an awful lot of people. So just to flip that back at him, I would say that the number of people that could ever make a statement like that would be very few.
Done?
Yep.
Councillor McManaman?
Thank you, Worship. And I'm just wondering, listening to Councillor Kepke's concerns, we have a budget meeting on the 18th. Could we not discuss it on the 18th? Later in the day on the 18th, and then bring the bylaw on the 2nd? Follow me?
Through you, Your Worship, Councillor McManaman, we certainly could do that. I'm not sure that we could have the consultant present for that discussion on the 18th. The afternoon you could? The afternoon you could.
Well, if that's the case, I agree with Councillor Kepke, because I think, well, depending on what direction council takes on all sorts of matters, there may be wording or nuances that we would want to have included or at least considered in the bylaw. So personally, I'm wondering if we shouldn't do that on the 18th, make a decision, the bylaw comes on the 2nd, and then we move from there.
And that's, do you want to go ahead and reply to that?
I would certainly prefer having that discussion on the 18th. That would be in my motion.
Okay, I'll go to Councillor Lemon next.
Well, you can't pass the bylaw the same night as we have the discussion, because the clerk's office has no clue where we're going to go. There are many schools of thought. There's a question about removing a lot of the soft costs that are included in the development charges. There's talk about a holiday. There's talk about a differential rate between certain areas of the city and others. There's no way you can have a bylaw. You have to write 285 bylaws to accommodate all the permutations and combinations that are possible. And if we have to create a development charges holiday for a week, 2 weeks, or a month to get it right the first time, I don't care. Because really, I want to get it right this time and not create problems.
So you're in agreement with Councillor
Yes.
Wright, is what you're saying, and Councillor Gregg, I think you covered. Okay, Councillor Dodd?
I'm just going to say I support doing this. I think as a new councillor here, it's hard for me to make a decision that's going to be based on the next 5 years of the future of our city and not actually understand what the capital budget is. I think it's really important as a council, considering this is such a important decision, that we need to be fully aware of what our implications could be, whether it be a holiday, whether it be whatever it is. I just want to express how my feelings on it are, is that none of us are professional development charges individuals. We're all just going based on our heart of what we stand for. So I think it's best, in my opinion, that we understand actually what we're dealing with prior to making a decision that's going to impact the future.
Okay, so to Deputy Mayor Wright's motion to table this to come up on February 18th, which is our second day of capital budget discussions, and then be prepared to be able to put the bylaw together and approved by March 2nd. Oops.
One question, procedural question. What happens if we don't have enough time?
We will
discuss the development chart.
cover that bridge when we get there.
Okay.
Covered bridges? Covered bridges. You know what I mean. Ms. Corsi?
Just almost, if I could, to that point, we will have to advertise that we are going to have that discussion at that meeting. So you're pretty much committed to having that development charge discussion on the 18th. So in order to properly advise the public that that discussion is going to go on.
Councilor McManaman?
Or just to that, why is there a need to advertise to the public? We didn't advertise this meeting, did we?
Well, the minutes were in the agenda, so the public could have knowledge that that was going to be discussed.
Fair enough, I'm just not sure we need.
So I just,
Fair enough.
in fairness to the public, I would like to be able to advise them that it's coming to that meeting on the 18th.
Okay, so to the motion, all in favor? Carried, thank you. If I can jump back to grid 12A, which is reports. 12A1 is from the Manager of Economic Development and Tourism, facilitating harbor dredging. Somebody want to present that? I see Steve's not here. Oh, there he is, sorry.
He's hiding.
Mr. Furness is there.
Your Worship, members of council, public, I think it's an opportune time to get our harbor users together, or future harbor users together, and have a discussion on how we might move forward on dredging and divestiture, without having any particular, just start the discussion. The harbor is, as anyone's heard me over the last few years, a very important strategic asset that I think could be, once it's dredged and divested, could become a significant economic asset. So if anyone has any questions.
Councillor Lemon?
Just one comment. With the federal election coming up in October, not that things like building roads and harbor dredging have ever been facilitated before an election, this might be a good time to put some pressure on the federal government to do something we've only been requesting, I think, for the last decade.
Councillor Thomas?
Yes, I'd just like to move the recommendation.
Good, okay. Any other questions, discussion? All in favor? Good, carried. Mr. Smith, 12.2A is your report on the appointments of the Downtown Improvement Area Board of Management.
Thank you, Your Worship. This report has been prepared for council as part of a three-step process. So the DIA board made recommendations to council for their board membership. Council considered the members in camera. This report is recommending that council come forward with a list of appointments, and if those can be made by name at this time. We're also looking for a motion to waive the sunset clause for the reappointment of certain members should council wish to reappoint people that are longer than a 6-year term.
Councillor Lemon?
Yes, Your Worship, I would like a motion, move a motion that in consideration of staff report CL 15012 respecting Downtown Improvement Area DIA Board appointments, City Council, 1, authorizes the execution of a bylaw amendment and the board committee bylaw to appoint the candidates put forward at the in-camera council meeting on February the 9th, 2015 to the DIA board for a term effective immediately and ending January 31st, 2019. Those persons being Dave Parsons, Patty Smith, Kathy Hannon, Rob Dinsmore, Diane Matisse, and Louise Nickel, and further, that we waive the length of service cap for the following appointments to that board, being Dave Parsons, Rob Dinsmore, and Diane Matisse. This motion is hereby moved.
Okay, other comments? All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. 12A3 is a report from the Director of Community Services with regard to RAFA Corporation for Release of Security. Ms. Coulter, you presenting that?
Thank you, Your Worship. On January 12th, the city received a request from Mr. Zeta to release the $50,000 of security that the city holds under the purchase and sale agreement. The agreement's effective date was October 5th, 2006. The security was originally required to ensure the environmental remediation and other performance requirements of the agreement. As I noted, the city holds $50,000 today. The agreement does lay out a framework under which the city would consider such a release, and that includes completion of the remediation, a record of site condition being registered, and a certificate of payment. The agreement is quite specific with respect to the remediation and divided the property into different zones. We do know that a record of site condition has been acknowledged by the MOE for what they call the development lands, but the remediation for the sensitive lands and spit remains outstanding. The certificate of payment from the engineering consultant and contractor, that's a certificate of payment really documents payment to those individuals, and the developer has not provided this type of documentation. There are other areas of the agreement that are not compliant. The city would, or staff would only recommend release of the security under the agreement if certain conditions were met. And one would be releasing the city from the terms of the agreement, providing the city with indemnification as is provided by the agreement to the satisfaction of the city solicitor, and providing an easement on the property in favor of the city for the waterfront trail as well as the trail along 3rd Avenue in a form acceptable to the solicitor. So staff are recommending that we would be willing, that the city indicate that we'd be willing to release the security subject to the 4 conditions outlined.
Okay, comments? Councillor McManaman?
Just a question on that waterfront trail providing an easement. I thought the developer was, it just occurred to me, was to construct that trail as part of the development.
They would still be required, but the city would have an easement so a trail could pass over the area. So we'd have a legal way for any trail to pass over there. The trail would be constructed pursuant to the development of the lands.
And so that construction part of the agreement, where does that come in? How would that come in? As part of the official plan?
Today, the construction of a waterfront trail would be required by, in conjunction with the development of the lands, both through site plan control, through the policies of the official plan. Council could add the construction of the trail or a requirement as a condition to the release if you wish.
Well, I'm just, having the easement's great, but do we have other powers to ensure the construction of the trail? That's my question.
We could make it a condition of a development agreement for those lands.
So not necessary. Not necessary
I
here.
don't believe it's necessary here. It's already spoken to in other documents.
Councillor Lemon?
Well, in that respect, the city still has not constructed its portion of the waterfront trail that would connect this waterfront trail. So we really have a little bit of embarrassment pushing somebody, asking them to do what we have not yet done. And it's going to happen as part, I've been assured that it'll happen as part of the wastewater treatment, but we've been many, many years not putting that section of trail in.
So I think I need a motion. Councillor McManaman?
I'll move the motion, and I would be happy if our trail will be done in 2016. If this developer has his part of the trail done in 2016, I think we'd all be quite pleased. So I'll move the motion.
Moving the recommendation as set out. Okay, any other comments? All in favor? Carried. Thank you. 12A4, report from purchasing agent with regard to reconstruction of 21st Street East, right away to East Bay Shore Road. Mr. Becking, you
Yes,
presenting
Your
that?
Worship, I'm probably in the best position to speak to the matter. As council is aware, the reconstruction of 3rd Avenue north of the sewage treatment plant is a high priority for construction. And tenders have been called in accordance with city policies for the undertaking of the work. The lowest compliant bidder was Harold Sutherland Construction Limited in the amount of $6,485,494.54. The budget for the project was $7.3 million, and the tender amount clearly is below that budget. It should be brought to council's attention that the budgeted amount includes a $250,000 contingency item, which is expendable only at staff's approval. So we're guarded to a degree against any escalation in costs. The project is subject to a number of funding arrangements, including a grant from the province in the amount of $1.1 million, and a commitment from the County of Grey for a $2 million contribution. With respect to the grant portion, those funds must be expended before the end of this fiscal year. in order to be eligible for repayment. So there is some urgency to dealing with the matter. The staff recommendation is that the contract be awarded to the lowest compliant bidder.
Good, thank you. Councillor Kapke?
Thank you, Your Worship. For the benefit of those watching, when do you expect construction to take place?
Through you, Your Worship, construction will commence as quickly and early as possible in the spring. It's contingent upon the lifting of half loads, which in this case, because the road is a county road, will be dictated by the county.
Councillor O'Leary?
I'll move the recommendation.
Great, thank you, Councillor Gregg. Councillor Gregg, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor By. I have a quick question. There's $479,800 that's considered engineering fees in this. Could that also be termed consulting fees? Because we're going to see one in a little bit where it's termed consulting fees.
The design of this particular project was undertaken by WSP, previously Genovar, who is an engineering consultant. So the short answer to your question is yes.
Councillor McManaman?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just the comment about communication of this project. So we're that's a sort of an artery into the city. Involves one of our major employers with Hobart's, and throughout the summer season, the Minor Soccer Association and thousands of travelers along that road going into the soccer complex. So I'm just wanting to ensure that we have, prior to construction, some robust discussion with at least those two, all the residents, of course, but those in particular, to make them aware of what's going to be open and how and when and all of the different details.
Your Worship, there'll be, that discussion will be started imminently with the Operations Committee with respect to detours and how that all gets communicated to the public, and how the directly affected residents will deal with very practical issues like property access, garbage pickup, school busing, and a whole host of other day-to-day issues.
Councillor Lemon?
And that is a major transit route, and that particular route is about one of our larger routes along with the Brook route. And so it's really important that we have an alternate routing system that's going to accommodate as many of the people on the East Hill and below the hill as possible. That's going to be interesting because you're going to have to cut right back to St. Mary's if the road's closed.
Again, Your Worship, that matter is already being addressed.
Good, thank you. So to Councillor O'Leary's motion, which was to moves the recommendations, all in favor? Good, carried, thank you. 12A5 is a report from purchasing agent with regard to 8th Street reconstruction from 5th Avenue East to 7th Avenue East, and I believe we got the report on paper in our desk tonight, so if you're looking on your computer, it's not there. Mr. Becking, presenting it.
Thank you, Your Worship. The other significant priority for the department this year is the reconstruction of 8th Street from 5th Avenue East to 7th Avenue East. Tenders were called in accordance with the city's policies to complete the work, and the lowest compliant bidder was E.C. King Contracting in the amount of $2,785,157.39. The project is also subject of a grant in the amount of $2 million and is contingent upon the city completing the works before the end of the calendar year. If council will turn their attention to page 3 of the report, the table gives you a summary of the current financial position with respect to the project. Council will note that the total projected cost for the project is $4,336,251.03, which is in excess of the project budget, which was originally set at $4 million. There are a number of things that have changed since the original budget was set, including issues relating to the Ryerson Park, which will be redeveloped as a part of this proposal. As well, there have been a number of charges that were incurred or will be incurred in order to make the project viable. I particularly would like to point out the fact that the contract contains provisional items amounting to almost $300,000, of which some will be picked up by Bell and Rogers, reducing that amount to $164,900 approximately. The budget also contains or the tender rather, also contains a contingency of $175,000. So we do have some degree of protection against escalation of costs. The other matter that I would point out to council is that the hydro and utility relocations within the corridor, the $305,000 estimate is a gross estimate, and we have since been working with the utility companies to simplify the design, which will ultimately result in a lowering of that cost. And that cost will also be subject to the provisions of the Public Utilities and Right-of-Ways Act with respect to cost sharing. So what you see there represents the gross amount and not the net amount, which we would expect to be something in the order of 30 to 40% below the amount indicated as a minimum. Long story short, I expect that we will be able to bring the project in around $4 million, but I cannot guarantee you that it will be in under the established budget. I would point out that the previous tender that council just awarded was below budget by roughly $200,000. So based on the combination of the two projects, we expect to be able to deliver both projects for the combined total budget. We also have are presently looking at opportunities to economize on the design, including reduction in the roadway width by approximately 2 meters. The impact of that will be to eliminate the bicycle lanes, the formal bicycle lanes within the cross-section, but it will still allow for some reduction in cost should that become necessary. The actual amount of that reduction, I cannot provide that information to council at this time, but we will be certainly looking at that as a potential cost-saving measure. And should the staff wish to recommend that change, we would bring that forward to Operations Committee for ratification before we would proceed.
Okay, Councillor Lemon?
Yeah, just to educate me, what is a PRV chamber?
PRV stands for Pressure Reducing Valve. The city's water distribution system is set up on the basis of several distribution or pressure districts. And when you have water that flows from a very high pressure down into the valley, essentially you have the potential of blowing pipes apart. So what we do is we put in a pressure reducing valve so that the operating pressure in the lower area is below the maximum allowable.
Well, wouldn't we have had such a valve on that line coming down that hill before, or did we not have a line?
There is one there now? Yeah, there is one there now, but it needs to be replaced.
So that's really not a function of the hill reconstruction, that's a function of the water system.
It is.
Councillor Gregg?
Thank you, Mayor Bai. My question, Ken, perhaps you can help me here, but the previous job was $6.4 million on tender, $480,000 of which was consulting and engineering firm work. This is one that comes in at $2.7 million, and we've got $512,000 of consulting. The first one was done by John Navarre. This one was done by C.C. Tatum. Why is C.C. Tatum absurdly off the mark in terms of the price of the job with the consulting and engineering work?
Want to go to the microphone?
For those who haven't met, I'm Sean Potter, sorry. The engineering technologist at the City of Owen Sound. The differences are simply the way that we added a fairly substantial amount of funds to hire a landscape architect to do Ryerson Park, the revitalization of Ryerson Park. So if you were to look at them, the original project costs and the original engineering fees, 8th Street was in line with the budget. We added Ryerson Park, we added a speciality, we had those two firms working together. There was some extra cost there. Another kind of fundamental point is on the 3rd Avenue job, we take the testing for all of the materials over the entire site and we put that onto the responsibility of the constructor. And on 8th Street, it's the responsibility of the engineer to supply testing on behalf of the City of Owen Sound. So there's $50,000 of that 500,000 plus number is just for testing of materials. So you're seeing that number is buried in the 3rd Avenue job, and it's for you to see as part of those fees for 8th Street. So it's, I would say with guessing, you're in the neighborhood of $80,000 to $100,000. That was 50 of that is testing that you wouldn't see in 3rd, and the rest of that is consulting fees associated with the park.
Go to Mr. Becking.
Your Worship, consulting fees typically run between 10 and 15% of construction cost. The amount of engineering required in a built-up urban environment such as 8th Street is significantly different than it would be in what is presently a rural environment on 3rd Avenue. So you're seeing a disparity there, and that in lion's share is the reason why there's the difference. With respect to 8th Street, the consulting fees are at 14.6% of construction value, which in my experience is at the upper range of normal. So I'm not concerned about it at all.
Councillor Dodd?
I'd like to move the recommendation.
Great, thank you. Any other discussion? All in favor? Carried. So we've got 2 roads at umpteen million plus water we're getting to that next, aren't we? Water treatment all happening in Owen Sound in one summer. Everybody should buy a bicycle to get around.
The civil engineer's rule, Your Worship, is that the shortest distance between 2 points is usually under construction.
And so we're at 12A6 next, which is, from the manager of water and wastewater with regard to wastewater plant upgrade. Welcome. Get you to push that button there, Mr. Prentice, so everybody can hear you.
Oh, it's fine.
There we go.
I'd appreciate it if you could pull up the report itself. The report itself, not the photos yet. The previous report, okay. Could you scroll down to the page that basically shows an overview? It's called Key Plan. Keep going. It's the next page after that one, right there, okay. My intent here is to go on a quick overview of the project itself before I get into the quarterly report. I understand that the Director of Operations provided a project overview to the new council late last year. It's my intention to just highlight the key points of the project and then proceed with discussion of the quarterly report. So I'll linger on this one just a little bit. This is a conceptual drawing of the upgraded plant as it is proposed to look once we're complete at the end of 2016. The main area of activity that will be occurring is the construction of the new BAF facility, Biological Aerated Filtration Secondary Treatment Facility. In addition, we'll co-locate ultraviolet disinfection at that location. So that is where most of the money is, where most of the action will be happening, and that is by far the largest building on site, or will be. The other thing we're constructing, and it's the current focus of attention, is a new biosolids storage facility on the former bike park site. That's there, 7A. The existing storage tank that you can see there, 7B, is of the same style. This new one will be quite a bit larger. We'll also be building a new digester support building beside the existing digester, and those really are the main focuses of attention. There is also another small chemical building going over here. Next page, please. Okay, so just a general overview of the report. I'm going to editorialize a bit on the current status of the project, because this quarterly report covers the period ending December 31st, 2014. We've had almost a month and a half of a lot of activity since then, so I want to keep you up to date. So the general site works and removals, the trail relocation by and large was undertaken. There's a new trail on the waterfront side to be constructed in the summer of 2016 as well. The North Berm construction is continuing, and environmental protection measures are maintained, which is primarily runoff protection for quality control. There's no activity to date at the screening and raw sewage pumping station at this point. Grit removal, there's no activity to date. There's not much going on there. It's scheduled for later in the project. Primary treatment and chlorination facilities. Excavation and concrete placement for the chemical building was completed, and a good amount of equipment was delivered to the site in January as well. Biological aerated filter. The excavation in the BAF area is continuing. We're on hold until such time as we get temporary hydro and other facilities relocated from the existing admin building, which has to be demolished before we can build the large BAF building. UV disinfection's in the same building, so there's no activity to date on that. The sludge digestion and boiler building, basically the pouring of the base slab is imminent there, and that's the current status of that. The new biosolids tank and pumping station, again, it's the most current focus of activity. And right now, if you drive by the site, you'll see one metal ring on the storage facilities in place. Shortly, they'll be building that section, or building that glass fused to steel tank from the ground up, and they'll be using jacks to lift each section at a time until it's in place and the roof is installed. The new electrical service, Hydro One, has initiated work for the pole relocation and installation temporary services to the site. They were on site today finalizing that, in fact. Environmental protection plan. The environmental protection measures are still in place. The Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, as part of our protocol agreement with them, are entitled to come and monthly inspect that. That has been ongoing, and there's been no concerns with respect to that. The health and safety part of the report, this, I've got to emphasize, is Graham, the constructors, workers, and his subcontractors. It is not city staff. So any incidents reported here are basically about contractor staff on site. So there were 2 incident reports that occurred during the period, and they're noted there. Activities impacting area residents. There was mud tracking on the roadway. That is no longer a problem at this point. There's been no complaints since. With respect to schedule, item E, the high-level schedule has been provided for the project as an attachment to this report. Basically, the primary impact on schedule so far has been weather delays that have been incurred due to weather events, significant weather events. So the information that's provided here is the current interim milestone for the construction of the biosolids storage facility, which is March 11th, 2015, and substantial performances for the entire project is November 21st, 2016. These dates have been shifted a little bit more due to weather events in January as well. Some more time extensions were granted to the contractor due to basically bad weather and closed roads. The payment certificate up to the end of 2014 have been issued, and it's been approximately $3 million of construction up to the end of 2014. Payment certificate for January of this year has just been received for another $1 million. The Finance Department has submitted grants to our grant applications to the province and the federal government as well to get our grant money as quickly as we can. We had a partnering session on September 16th, 2014, and a follow-up on December 16th, 2014. At those partnering sessions, it's basically City Upper Management, RAM Upper Management, and Jail Richards, the consulting engineer upper management. It has many components, but one of the primary points of the partnering session is to review the identified risks and see if anything else can be done to mitigate those risks. It was a successful partnering session, or at least we're characterizing it that way. And all team members are committed to carry out the project with a partnering approach. Monitoring the performance of partners, there are no significant concerns at this time, and there is a graphic in Appendix B for further details on that. The monitoring of risk factors, I'd like to skip ahead to the graphic on that. Keep going. Keep going. And I think it's the next one. No, one more. There, okay. So this is sort of the, let me put it this way, if there's something on red on this sheet, then we stay up at night. But as it's only issues that are flagged in yellow, it's basically issues that we have to keep an eye on. And I'll go over them briefly. Discussed weather delays. So we've been addressing those with extensions to the project time in an appropriate fashion. The contaminated soils was one issue that was raised or became an issue when we were excavating the site. Currently, all the holes have been excavated save for the rest of the BAF facility, and we still have $27,000 left in the contaminated soils allowance, cash allowance for the project. So we're hoping that'll be enough. We had a cash allowance for contaminated soils of $150,000, consumed a great deal of it, but we've also done almost all the excavations save for the remaining part of the BAF facility. So with luck, we'll be fine there. Hydro One coordination, a bit of a concern when you have any third party that greatly impacts the project. Recent discussions with the contractor indicate things are going okay, and they're not asking for our intervention to assist with that at this time. So, dewatering is flagged as a concern mainly because we have received a new permit to take water. We're not moving a lot of water. We're moving only a fraction of our permitted amount for dewatering for construction. The problem, however, is that everything is freezing because it is cold. So their piping and their water meters are freezing, which is a problem. Currently, we have about $1.4 million left in contingencies, and the total amount of money in cash allowances is about $900,000. So, go over the photographs next. So here we have a photo of, I mentioned the contaminated soils. This is them excavating and hauling away the contaminated soils that were found on the bike park site late last year. Again, there still remains about $27,000 in that cash allowance. So we're hoping we'll be fine in that regard. Next one. This is the preparation of the base for the biosolids tank at the bike park location. That photo you can see is taken in October. Next one. There's the beginning of rebar and formwork on the site. Next. There's the biosolids base slab concrete pour. The contractors have been diligent in keeping temperatures appropriate for concrete work. The consulting engineer is keeping a relatively close eye on it for that. It's kind of important, to say the least. So this is rebar installation and a biosolids base slab pour. Next one. There's the concrete walls poured at the biosolids pumping station building. Again, this is showing that most of the locus of activity is this storage tank at the former bike park site. The concrete results, incidentally, have so far been very good. This is the shoring pile installation for the digester support building. That excavation is now complete. A lot of work was done at that particular location in January as well. There's shoring timber installation at the digester support building. And that's shown as basically mid-December. There's just an example of some equipment deliveries, the new blowers for the facility, new aeration blowers. Some old sludge piping that was removed in the gallery to be replaced by new piping. There's the chemical building base preparation and the service installation underway. At this point in time, the concrete is poured at this particular location. And there's the pour. A couple of aerial photos. I believe these were taken either in late December or early January. What's unfortunate about this is the snow makes it impossible to see where we've dug holes. But I can still point at them. The bath facility, you can kind of see that there's an excavation beside the existing admin building. This existing admin building is to be taken down. There's also an excavation over here for the digester support building. And you can see here there's form work you can see for the small chemical building. And here's where you can see most of the activity, which is the biosolids tank in the south property. Next one. Simply different views of the same, on the same day at the same aircraft actually. There's the crane that they're using to do most of the work on this site. Again, just a better view of that one site. And that's basically a photograph that I'm going to guess that's early January, late December, like I said. That concludes the quarterly report.
Thank you. Question from Deputy Mayor Wright.
This is more out of curiosity. Contaminated soil. Why did we have to remove it?
If you want to keep it on site, then you're subject to regulatory requirements. You have to deal with it in specific ways, and you have to have a record of site condition. And by the time you've done all that, you're probably spending about as much as you would have just to haul it away. So, and we have a net cut situation. In other words, we have material to spare. So why would you shuffle contaminated soil around the site when at the end of the day you're just going to haul something off site anyway? It might as well be the contaminated stuff to a landfill. That's the short answer, essentially.
Councilor McManaman.
Thank you.
Just a good report, Matt, and I do think it's important to keep these, bring these to council. 2 questions. Project still on time?
Except for the extensions granted, yes.
Project still on budget?
There's a chart in here, but basically, yes.
Good, thank you.
I'll move receipt of the report.
Okay. Deputy Mayor Wright moved receipt of the report. All in favor?
Thank you, Paul.
Thanks, Matt. Well done.
Was that 10 minutes?
12A7 report, engineering technologist, regard to Syntec process equipment multi-budget year requirement, sole source approval. Who's presenting that? Mr. Becking, you wanna-
I see a lot of eyes looking in my direction, so I guess I'm the guy, Your Worship. Yes, the pressure reducing valve, I presume this is the pressure reducing valve. Yeah, the chamber. When the design was being done, there was insufficient time to include the design and still make the tender issuance date. And given the fact that this is highly specialized work and requires design before it can be estimated, staff proceeded to have a sole source award. It also falls under the heading of compatibility with existing infrastructure. So it was a good way to kind of get the whole process moving and at the same time be compatible with our existing infrastructure. Staff are therefore recommending that we award to Syntec process equipment in the amount of $81,200.
Councilor McManaman.
Thank you, and I understand, I'm just not sure on the wording and the recommendation. Why is this a multi-budget year aren't we talking about purchasing one piece of equipment for this year, like right now?
This particular item is for this year. The services and the types of chambers, materials within the chambers, and valving that's there is something that is the same throughout the city. Each one of our valve chambers has the same types of parts in it, so that if anything was to ever happen, we have them stocked and we can just jump in there and change it, or we can rely on the expertise of Syntec if it's the problem beyond the capabilities of our distribution staff. So the multi-year is that the next one of these chambers that comes up, we can just get on the phone, get right on to doing the design, making sure that we're getting a product delivered to us that we're familiar with and commissioned in a way that we come to expect from this company.
So this, you're not just asking for this one, you're asking for anyone in the future as well?
Yes.
And, well, how many are there in the system?
There are 10.
I don't have any...
Sorry, there are 20. There are 10 that are pressure reduction chambers, and there are 10 that are check chambers.
Your rationale for purchasing this one and installing it, I get, no argument. I'm just wondering, so how long would this go for? Like, there's no time frame on this.
And that is the recommendation. Because of our familiarity with what we have in the ground, everything that's there is something that this company supplies. They've commissioned each one of the chambers that are in the city. They've been working with us for a very long time. So we're more formalizing that arrangement. And sorry, I can't remember exactly what the clause that we checked off is, but it's essentially to stay within a conformity.
I don't ever recall this ever coming to this discussion or anything ever like this ever coming to council before. We're approving now to use a piece of equipment forever. And I'm not sure, is that really what we want to do? I get this one, I'm not talking about this particular piece, I'm talking about that longer term.
Mr. Ritchie, you had your hand up there?
I would only suggest, and Sean has pointed out, this is probably an arrangement that has been occurring but not been noted. I would put it, we are at this particular time in the valve chamber department, we're a Ford shop. And it would be not in our best interest, the citizens' best interest, to have one Chevy out there when all of our guys know how to operate Fords. We have Ford parts on the shelf, we could put it in quickly. When these things go, we need to do that quickly. At the future, if with experience we find that we may want to switch distributors, we may do that, but again, we would probably switch distributors a whole, and we would find through experience perhaps we were switching to another one. But as Sean has pointed out, when these things go, we need to get them replaced quickly. The parts we want there are going to be Syntec. So it's an informal arrangement. You are correct, I don't recall this coming forward before, but it certainly sounds logical.
Councillor Kapke?
Thank you. Just one question on attachment 2. There's a little chart there that says taxes payable and amount for this project, approximate blank is required. Is there an amount that should go in there?
I'm sorry, that was...
There we go. For this project, approximate dollar blank is required. Is there an amount that should be in there?
That was suggested that it not be filled out because of the 81,200 pertain to this particular project, but without being able to estimate any of future costs because it's a multi-year agreement, that was left out.
Councillor Lemon?
I assume there are a number of companies that manufacture these control valves.
Yes.
Pressure control valves. Like, I'm not disagreeing that we're not using the right company, but my question is, do we ever do price comparisons between the various companies? Because sometimes when people are sole suppliers, the price seems to escalate. When it's competitive, like, the analogy was used about if you always had a Chev, you don't buy a Ford or vice versa. I went from a Dodge to a Mitsubishi, so yes, sometimes you do.
The car salesman?
Sorry, clearly council's a little uncomfortable with the longer-term arrangement, so perhaps I suggest that staff do a further report on the long-term arrangement. The council approved this one, quite frankly, I believe it's already on order.
Yes, it is.
So the longer-term arrangement, perhaps we would come back with a further report on exactly that, and if council would feel more comfortable tendering each valve chamber, and the explanations we have at that time don't sound sensible, we can do that.
I'm
going to go back to Sean.
Not
Go
to be
ahead.
argumentative anyways, I don't want to appear that that's the case. What this is allowing us to do is to specify this equipment. In a tendering situation, we would almost always write in the specification or approved equivalent. What it allows everybody to do is to go to the same company and give us the same number, and it's not something that we have to over-evaluate at the end of tender period. If someone shows us that it is an approved equivalent and that it's cheaper, we'll bring that to you, or you will bring it to us, depending on which direction that comes from. So if we are being taken advantage of due to the arrangement of this agreement, it'll show in the tender pricing. We'll see it. So there will always be a specification that says or approved equivalent, but when they're doing the bids, each contractor will have to hold this particular company.
Okay, Councillor O'Leary?
Thanks, Your Worship. I'd like to move the recommendation.
Okay, good. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried. Good, thank you. We're up to 12A8, if you want to give us a...
Yeah, I have a very short report from the county. On City Council meeting on February 9th, we had a McSweeney and Associates presented the Economic Development Plan. The city manager and the Economic Development Officer were there for the rollout. The next steps are to set the goals and the timelines, and there will be another public meeting coming up before we have a final document. We have a search committee in place for hiring a new CAO. The acting clerk, the acting CAO is Sharon Vokes at this time. We have, the budget will be discussed in March, will be finalized in March, and at that time, we will be making a decision on what portion of the remaining funds in the reserve account will be handed out to the municipality, whether it'll be 50%, 100%, or whether any of it will be handed out. And you will recall that we tabled that motion from the town of Blue Mountain, so perhaps we should put that back on our agenda before March. Well, I guess maybe we should get talking about that, because we need to know what you as a city council want us to do at that budget meeting, whether we're going to support 50% or whether you want to talk about more than 50%. That's something Councillor McManaman talked about, the Blue Mountain resolution, and I'm not sure what they want to do with that. City manager.
Ms. Corsi?
We can put that on the next budget discussion if you'd like.
Okay, that's
good.
And all other reports were of a general nature.
Any questions for Deputy Mayor Wright? No, good. Thank you. I have to move receipt of that one. Madam Clerk? Don't have to. Yeah, okay. Good, thank you. Down to 12B, which is the consent agenda items. Ms. Bloomfield, do you want to give us a quick run through?
Yes, through you, Your Worship.
Okay, go ahead.
The consent agenda includes a report respecting a planning application from Georgian Bluffs, a planning notice for which the city has no comment, minutes for receipt from the Library Board, Police Board, Owen Sound Municipal Nonprofit Housing Corporation, the Owen Sound Housing Company, and there's also correspondence that has been received that is being presented for the information of council.
Good, thank you. Someone want to move receipt? Councillor McManaman, moving receipt or approval, I guess, whatever consent agenda items. Down to 12C, minutes of boards. We didn't vote. Sorry. Did you want to comment?
No, you just didn't call the vote on the consent agenda.
Great, thank you. You're right. Getting to be the that hour. All in favor? Good, thank you for keeping me on. Consent agenda passed, carried. 12C is minutes of boards and committees for approval, starting with the minutes from the bylaw committee. Ms. Kepke, do you want to present that one?
I will.
Okay, good.
Sorry about this.
No, it's okay.
Sure. In our bylaw committee meeting that took place, there was an excellent introduction to bylaws and enforcement by Jeff Smith, our bylaw coordinator, which helped all of the members understand the processes that were taken. Sorry. Got caught. Do I have to repeat all that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, you've practiced it, so you'll be even better this time.
Thank you. There was an excellent presentation by the bylaw coordinator, Jeff Smith, who presented the introduction to bylaws and enforcement, so that helped the new members of the committee understand their purpose of being there. The committee dealt with their 2015 action plan, and contained in that action plan was the appointment bylaw, set fines audit, a notice bylaw review, keeping certain kinds of animals bylaw, crossing guard relocation policy, meeting procedures bylaw, 2015 parking system review, and then in the latter term, they will review, again, the action plan. It's certainly an ambitious schedule, and there were a few other items that the committee members may want to toss in there if possible, but we'll see how the term allots. The major policy that was reviewed is the parking policy and revisions to that policy that were recommended. So I will move the adoption of the minutes for the
Good.
bylaw committee.
Good. Any questions? All in favor? Carried. Thanks. Minutes Cultural Advisory Committee from January 14th, 2015. Councillor Dodd, one of those?
I was fortunate, along with Councillor Kepke and Councillor O'Leary, this was my first Cultural Advisory Committee, and it was actually my last, unfortunately, from the interim.
That was a brief career.
Yeah, I got my name in there. So we had a great presentation from Blaine Courtney. As we had seen today, he discussed about his 153rd year of the Emancipation Festival. It went on to just kind of recognize how great that festival has gone. It's gone through its battles. We're fortunate that Blaine has stepped in there and has been a great chair that he has been. He came to recognize the fact that the Emancipation Festival had won the Harriet Tubman Award from the Ontario Black History Society, which was obviously a great thing for our community and a great thing for the Emancipation Festival. We also got into more depth on something that he had brought up about something that really connects back to home about having a local OHL team, about the black players that played in the OHL and the NHL and their struggles that they had in the hockey league. Also in there, we had the events facilitator, Doug Cleverly, discussed that we have the Cultural Awards ceremony upcoming this February 15th at 2 o'clock. He also went into detail about something new that's been going on with the Economic Development Committee, that is going on with the Cultural Advisory Committee now with the Cultural Mixer, which is going to take place on March 9th at the library. We also went on, it was a busy day, we got to discuss the Billy Bishop Bash, and for Billy's birthday that he just celebrated on February 8th, which was also the opening of the flight simulator. I was fortunate to do this along with MPP Bill Walker. So Bill obviously knew more about flying than I did. I did a barrel roll and wouldn't have been here today if that was real life.
Don't try it with a plane.
We also wanted to recognize the fact that the Billy Bishop Airport has received a $15,000 sponsorship, which helps from the airport in Toronto. Helps the museum to offer free tours for school children. We discussed how there was more partnerships going on. The Blueprint Autism Partnership is going into its second session, as well as there's an Owen Sound Police Partnership that's going on for the youth at risk. Great news for the community, great news for the art gallery. The Canadian Mint has announced that there will be a commemorative coin featuring Tom Thompson in 2016, I believe. And then on behalf of the library, Tim Nichols brought forward that they will be doing, they rescheduled, which is still accurate, yeah, they rescheduled the Hockey Authors event, which was set to do when the hometown hockey was going on back in January, but because of weather, obviously everything was canceled, so those will be rescheduled. Also, there is March 27th is the submissions deadline for the Youth Film Festival, which is always a great thing to see. And I know I partook in this last year. I'm sure a lot of other councillors that we had the Winterlicious, where we got to enjoy a lot of food for cheap food at some local restaurants. So it's now called Savor Owen Sound, which will be around for February 21st to March 14th. So this is, if you haven't done it, this is a great opportunity to go out in the community, try new restaurants, and it's at a pretty affordable budget. And we also wanted to recognize the First Fridays events that have been going on, that's been organized by Dr. Cobbler. I know Camille and Ron have put a lot of work in that, and I think they deserve the credit that they have gotten from it. So congratulations to them, and I hope that continues. And that's basically about it that we went through.
So you're moving...
I will move this, yes.
Great. Any questions? All in favor? Good, we're carried. Thanks. 12C3 we've already done. 12C4 is minutes from the Financial Advisory Committee meeting held on January 27th, 2015. Councillor Wright, do you want to present those? You, January 27th, you weren't at the Finance Committee meeting?
Yes. Oh, I might have been.
That knows exactly where she goes.
I think that was your last one.
That was my last meeting?
Yes.
Well, I just haven't got them hooked up here. You have them hooked up? Thank you very much. I know that we thanked everyone for serving on it, and it wasn't, well, thank you very much. We talked about various issues and topics that we should talk about at Finance, and we threw out a few suggestions, but then we also thought that we should wait and let the new committee throw out some suggestions of what they would like to talk about. We talked about tax policy options, quarterly budget to actual reviews, reserves, reserve funds, etc. We asked for reports on the audit. Well, we get the auditors' reports every year, and it just seems it was a regular Finance Committee meeting. I don't think there was anything really interesting that we did discuss, was there, Mr. Ritchie? It seemed to me that it, I would have remembered if it was. We talked about our banking services and whether we should put an RFP out for them. We decided not to do that, and that was the end of our meeting.
So Councillor McManaman had to wrestle with Councillor Thomas to try and trick him into going on to Finance, and now you tell him that it's boring?
Well, that one was because we didn't we didn't have an awful lot on the agenda, and but not all of them are. I mean, we deal with a lot of exciting things. We did deal with a lot of exciting things. We talked about IT, and we get all the IT plans, and when we talk about things, but we're right in the middle of budget, and our finance department is up to their eyebrows in budget. So I mean, it's really difficult to ask them to come in with additional things. Sometimes we even cancel our Finance Committee meeting. We have in the past, when we're in the middle of budget, we do not have a Finance Committee meeting. But since this was the last Finance Committee meeting of this committee, we held it, and that was the reason why. And I think Ms. Kepke would like to add something.
And did you want to move the adoption of your minutes while you've got the red light on?
I will do so.
Okay. You want to turn your red light off? Councillor Kempke,
Thank you. Just of note, I see the committee approved flow-through agency sponsorship for the Owen Sound City Band to be the Community Foundation Grey Bruce, so that anyone wanting to donate to the Owen Sound City Band now can receive a tax receipt from the Community Foundation.
We did do that.
Yeah.
Good, thank you. Councillor Lyman.
Yeah, I have a question for the treasurer. How long have we been using the Royal Bank? Because I know we were at the Bank of Montreal till a certain councillor made a motion asking for RFPs. But how long have we been with the Royal now?
Through you, Your Worship, at least 13 years. So it'd be prior to that, and absolutely our intent will be to do an RFP next year.
Thank you. So all in favor, oh, Councillor.
To add that the Royal Bank did give us an extra % this year to enhance the program. That's why we stayed with them for another year.
1%.
Okay, and all in favor of adoption of those minutes? Great, carried, thank you. And I think we've got one more from operations. Councillor McManaman.
Thank you, Worship. I'd ask Mr. Ritchie if he could pick up the finance minutes, though. Pick up those meetings, get them more exciting, like these operation minutes you're about to hear about. Maybe too exciting sometimes. We heard from the Operations Committee, had a presentation, deputation from the Blue Communities people. Council's well aware of those, that group. They've asked to table that whole discussion until later in the summer, into the fall. They're taking some of our concerns back to their group and to try to come back with some wording that they feel we might be able to accept. So we'll see how that goes. Another deputation from a business up on 8th Street. We are all aware of the parking issues on 11th Avenue East in the 8th Street neighborhood. Possible solution, we'll have to see, but it's a positive step anyway, and we'll still no solution to that parking issue, but moving in the right direction. Two different discussions about the Household Hazardous Waste Day. One approving the funding we get from the province, which is in the neighborhood of $40,000, and then a subsequent report approving the company to come and haul away a lot of that hazardous waste and spend that $40,000. One other discussion on the, you're all aware of the fitness lanes, they're called bike lanes, along 2nd Avenue East from the Jubilee Bridge to Harrison Park. An omission in that bylaw, that lane was to extend all the way to 6th Street. So from 6th south to the Jubilee Bridge, that section was not included in the original bylaw. It was supposed to have been, but it wasn't. So anyway, they're just asking that staff work with the county to get it included in the bylaw, because that's where it was supposed to be originally. There's a discussion here about operations restructuring. The council's aware of the elimination of the manager of public works position, retitling one position, and then the discussion committee had on the reinstatement of an administrative position at Public Works. Fair bit of discussion about that point. Committee felt that if the position, they felt the position was needed. The larger discussion around paying for that or service analysis, they felt that was more of a council discussion as opposed to a committee discussion. So not sure where council wants to go with that one. Purchasing a new grader, a used grader from the county, but at a good price, and should ultimately save us some money. Report coming. It'll be of interest to council on the road and asphalt conditions of the city, with some hopefully some costs associated with it, and that may be a bit of an eye-opener of what some of the state of our pavement and how we I guess to move forward on fixing it, we have to quantify the problem. So last thing, a report will be coming about requests came from some students. I think all of council got it, about a sidewalks to Notre Dame. Staff will be bringing back a report on that, and also included these minutes. It was discussed in the last minutes, but there's a report here about railings at the Bay Shore. I know that's a discussion that gets asked of council sometimes. So the actual report was omitted from the last minutes, and it's included in these ones, so it gets into the actual detail of the problems of having those railings at the Bay Shore, not meeting the building code. Anyway, I would move those minutes for adoption.
Including the personnel matter, were we supposed to discuss that here? What was the intent of the committee?
The committee was just,
Sorry? Yep. Go ahead, Councilor McManaman, if you
well,
want.
no, as I said, the committee felt their role, if staff was recommending it and could justify it, the committee felt it was their role to either recommend the position or not based on its merits. The financial end of it, I think it's fair to say they didn't really, they felt that was a council discussion. So, you know, they're what they are. We could pull that and discuss it separately if it's the wish.
Councillor Dodd?
Sorry, Peter. I would like to pass those those minutes, except I would like to pull out the part about the administrator. I think that as we are coming up to a service review, I think that is a decision we can make at that time. So if we can pull that part out of it and table that for a later date, but I'd be
sure.
Can we do that?
I look to the clerk. We could move those minutes, save and accept, tabling that to service analysis. That would be accepted. If that's.
Yeah. Yes, until after service analysis.
So it's the intent. Okay, discussion on that motion? Councillor Thomas?
I just want to point out that in the discussions we had at my final meeting of the Operations Committee, you know, the intent had been to just replace this assistant, and we talked about it at the committee, and we approved the reinstatement until the end of the wastewater treatment plant project, because it's clear that there is plenty of work for an additional person between now and then as the project really ramps up to getting towards completion. So I just wanted to get that out there. I'm not going to support pulling it out of the report, because there was due consideration given to the idea of this position, and it was really felt, I think, by the operations department that there was enough activity going on now that they really needed to have the additional body.
Thank you. Councillor Kepke?
Just through your worship to Mr. Becking, is this a position at the Public Works, or is this a position for yourself?
Through your worship, no, this is a position at Public Works. Prior to my coming with the city, there was, the position did exist. It was removed from the organizational structure. We have since got into the largest capital program that the city has undertaken. That's putting a considerable amount of strain on Mr. Prentice. As a stopgap measure, I've taken my own administrative assistant and put her up at Public Works 3 days a week on about a half to three-quarter time basis. But I don't see that as being a sustainable situation for the duration of the wastewater treatment plant contract. And so the position would be paid for out of the water and wastewater budget. The position would report to Mr. Prentice. The committee felt with justification that the position should be a contract position up to the end of the construction of the wastewater treatment plant, at which time it would be reviewed beyond that if it was required. And that is the way it's currently being proposed, as a 2-year contract position.
I can go ahead, Councillor Lemon.
I would assume from that, then at the end of the wastewater treatment plant construction, when that's all into the system, everything working, then it would come back to this council to see whether we wanted to continue the position or not. Is that correct?
That is absolutely correct.
And would there be any penalty if we decided not to continue it?
No, because I believe the direction of committee was that it should be a 2-year contract position. So therefore, the contract would terminate at the end of that period unless it was renewed or council chose to make it a permanent position.
Extended.
Good question for City Manager, Ms. Corsi. I'm having trouble of why this is coming through a committee to hire an employee and coming to council to make this decision. I would have thought this would be a staffing decision made within the administration and not be placed in front of us. If committees start deciding who we're hiring, the positions we're filling, I think it opens up one heck of an interesting discussion.
Well, Your Worship, because it was more of a restructuring rather than just adding positions, so we did 3 things there. We eliminated the Manager of Public Works position, the position that you've just heard some discussion on this evening, and a retitling of the Superintendent position. So it was an information report in some respects, but it also adds that position as a contract position. You're right. In a different situation, arguably we could have gone ahead with it, but because we are doing 3 different things and we're really looking at the structure of the department, it was felt appropriate to bring it to the committee, and therefore the minutes come to this council.
So really the request is for council to approve the change in structure.
But certainly the 3 things are in that report, the 3 items that I just mentioned. And I can tell you that I think that the need is too great and too timely to wait for the full service review that we're going to be undertaking. In fairness, it's money well spent on a very, very significant project, the largest project that we've ever had in this city. And it is largely to make sure that Matt has the backup to keep organized, to keep the paper flow going, and to keep things like invoices, et cetera, straight. So I think it is money very well spent in this situation.
Okay, thank you. Back to Councillor Dodd. You've heard all of this. You're okay with your motion going ahead?
Yeah, absolutely I am. I have a feeling, I respect everyone's decision here, but at time of budget, we decided that we were going to wait for service review on these situations. Service review is coming June. Is that when we're doing something?
So we're going to bring a report to you probably March 2nd. We're working on it. But that report is to speak to you about exactly what it is that you want to have done. Because there's probably a spectrum pretty wide of what a core service review can mean. And the amount of work required either in-house or out-of-house to complete that work. So we need on March 2nd to have that fundamental discussion with you and then move forward from there. To do a comprehensive service review is going to take months, not weeks, of staff time, and I'm looking to a staff that are already overburdened to do that work.
Okay, so we have a motion which was to adopt the minutes from the operations meeting with the exception of that particular piece on the structural change, and to save that or send that to service review. Councillor McManaman.
Sorry, just hearing the comments here, perhaps it would be appropriate to have 2 different motions there. I'm the one that said you didn't need it, but maybe it is required, just to be clear.
Well,
if he did originally ask to pull it, so perhaps we should just pull that piece and vote on it separately.
Okay, so can the first motion then will be to adopt the minutes from the meeting with the exception of that part? Is that correct? Councillor Dodd's indicating yes. All in favor? Good. Okay, that's carried. Now, Councillor Dodd's second motion then is with regard to that matter. Don't let me put words in your mouth.
Tabling that position until after the service review.
Sorry. Tabling it to the service review?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
So Councillor Kepke?
Just a question on that. What are the budget implications for this?
Total implications are about $54,000 a year, based on current rates within the collective agreement.
Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Lemon.
That is funded out of water and wastewater treatment budget, ergo it's not on the tax rate?
That is correct.
So it doesn't have any budget implications in our budget that we're going to be working on, the tax budget.
Point of clarification, Your Worship. Council will be dealing with both the rate and the the property tax rate budgets as part of their deliberations. So with respect, Councillor, yes, there is an implication on the user rate side of the equation.
Exactly what I said. There's no implication on the tax side
Good, thank
in
you.
terms of property taxes.
Councillor McManaman?
Sorry, and just to be clear, Councillor Lemons said on the wastewater treatment plant, this is not funded from the wastewater treatment plant.
No, it's out of the rate budget because it's not an eligible expense under the terms of the agreement with the province and the federal government.
Okay, so further discussion, seeing none. The motion is to take that section and move it to service analysis. All in favor of doing that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, it carries. Next, we're down to 12D, which is minutes of in-camera meetings for approval. Is that on papers? Somebody need to move it? Just need a motion from anybody. Okay. So can someone move, Councillor Dodd, you moving approval of the minutes of in-camera from January 21st?
Yes, I'll move this motion.
January 26th and
28th.
January 28th, all
Yes.
three of them?
I'll move all three of them.
Any questions? All in favor? Good, carried. We're down to other business, and I think Councillor O'Leary, I've got you written down first.
Thanks, Your Worship. I just wanted for the people at home, I found a good read on CNN that's regarding medical marijuana. And it's an article from Dr. Sanjay Gupta, who is the chief medical correspondent with CNN. And he originally put an article in Time magazine back in 2009 on why he would vote no on pot. And he's done a new one. He's traveled all over the world in 2014, and he's now here to apologize. And he's saying, I just marked this out, we have been terribly and systematically misled for nearly 70 years in the United States, and I apologize for my own role in that. Anyway, it's a pretty good read, and people should check it out. I did highlight one thing here. He said, take the case of Charlotte Fiji, who I met in Colorado. She started having seizures soon after birth. By age 3, she was having 300 a week, despite being on 7 different medications. Medical marijuana has calmed her brain, limiting her seizures to 2 to 3 a month. That's all, thanks.
Good, thank you. Councillor, Deputy Mayor Wright?
Thank you very much. I have some questions and a concern. Our bus shelters are they owned by Pattison Sign Company? If I could, through you to perhaps, I'm not sure who can answer this. Mr. Beckham's going to answer that.
The answer is yes and no. Some are, and some are not.
Some are not. Do we have an agreement still with Pattison Signs for these bus shelters?
Yes, we do, Your Worship.
And when does this agreement run out?
I don't have that information at my fingertips, but I could certainly find out for council and get back to you.
Okay, thank you. I would like to know what is in that agreement with Pattison Signs, because I have a real concern that we do have that one bus shelter that we all know about. That is the sign that $100 for $1 is blocking traffic on 3rd Avenue and where the Georgian 3rd Avenue West and where the Georgian Yacht Club Road comes out. You cannot see the traffic coming down if you're coming up that road, and so that's a real problem. And I understand that we're going to move that bus shelter, or that bus shelter is going to be moved.
That is my understanding, Your Worship, yes.
Yeah, well, I guess I hope it's more than just your understanding. I hope it's a sure thing that it's going to be moved, because if it isn't moved, I'm afraid it's going to be all over the news that we are contravening our own bylaw by blocking traffic with signs. And I don't want to see that happen. I would rather us move that bus shelter so that it's not blocking traffic. But I'd also like to see just what kind of an agreement we have with Pattison Signs with regard to signs in our bus signs and where we put them. They don't pay sign bylaw, they don't pay for sign permits, do they? Do they?
I don't believe so, no. Go ahead,
The
Ms.
sign
Coulter.
bylaw does exempt signage in a bus shelter.
I'm sorry, what was that? Sign bylaw?
Does exempt, so the signage in a bus shelter isn't required to have a sign permit or pay.
It's not required. But it shouldn't block traffic. I mean, that's very dangerous.
Mr. Becking?
With respect, Your Worship, I am familiar with that situation. I did personally go out and have a look at it, and if a driver is behaving appropriately and in accordance with the Highway Traffic Act, there's nothing unsafe about that situation.
Okay, I'm going to disagree with you on that.
That's my professional opinion.
Yeah, but I am hoping that that bus shelter will be moved. If we are saying that it's going to be moved, then I'm hoping that we do move it. Thank you.
I'm with Arlene. Anyone else? Ms. Coulter, you're next.
Thank you, Your Worship. Councillor Gregg is the Chair of Community Planning and Heritage Advisory Committee, and we have those minutes from February 5th.
Thank you. Councillor Gregg, do you want to present them?
I can do that. Thank you, Mayor Bai. I was...
Hold on,
Oh,
we're
you
getting
haven't been passed?
opposition here.
We didn't get them.
They were sent.
We did get them Friday?
They were exciting, and you didn't miss much. So here we go. I was told that Planning and Heritage is full of surprises, and it is, because they made me chair. We had an overview of the Planning and Heritage departments by staff, including planning and bylaw. We also had one main issue which was presented to committee to consider, and that was a request for a demolition permit at the Art Moore Estate, which is located at the top of Moores Hill, immediately to the south of the top of the hill. They're looking to alter a building that is somewhat protected under the Heritage Act. So legislation limited the city's ability to issue permits in a real quick manner. It is 60 days that the city must allot to pass before they can have a demolition permit. Bylaw was working aggressively and proactively with them to perhaps issue a conditional permit so they could move forward after the 60 days has lapsed. We also had the committee appoints one member to accessibility. So it was decided, and George Makowski accepted. He's already on accessibility, but he accepted the appointment from planning, thereby freeing up one position on accessibility to appoint a member to ensure that they have a majority of committee members who fit the disabled criteria. Any questions, or are you still reading?
I'm going to maybe ask Ms. Coulter to help you with a little bit of clarification. The Moore House is being demolished?
The Moore House is located at the top of Moores Hill at 461 4th Avenue West. There is an addition that was built to the building sometime after 1977. It's only the addition that is going to be demolished. The main portion of the house will remain. The proposal is that there's a new addition that is actually much more in keeping with the heritage character of the original home that would be constructed in its place. Because the building is on the city's heritage register, the Ontario Heritage Act requires the 60 days for council to have to make a decision. There's a few options outlined in the report. Committee very much supported allowing this partial demolition in order that they could construct a future addition.
So the main part of the beautiful red brick house remains. It's just that old shed that got changed into a kitchen or something that's going. Whew. Good. Councillor Gregg, you moved to adopt your minutes?
Yes, I move that council accepts and approves these minutes.
Any questions? All in favor? Good, carried. Number 4, McManaman. Councillor McManaman is...
Thank you. Late breaking item, Your Worship. Forgot to mention that the summer minor sport registration, the first one is this Thursday, February 12th, 5:30 at the Bay Shore, 5:30 to 8 p.m. The second one is Wednesday, February 18th, 5:30 to 8. And the last one is Tuesday, March 10th, 5:30 to 8, all at the Bay Shore. So, but the first one, this Thursday, February 12th, I guess before our next meeting, Wednesday, February 18th, are the 2 upcoming dates. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that covers all of our other business. Motion the committee rise and report.
Move the committee rise.
And all in favor? Good, that's carried. We're in formal session. Number 15, resolution adopting proceedings in committee of the whole.
Moved by myself, seconded by
Button.
Councillor Thomas. Good thing my mic wasn't on. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Thomas. The action taken in committee of the whole in considering public meetings, deputations, public question period, matters arising from correspondence, reports, matters tabled, motions for which notice was previously given, and other business be hereby confirmed by council.
All in favor? That's carried. Number 16, notices of motion. I believe there's no notices of motion. New business by resolution. Seeing none. Bylaws, number 18.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Kepke, the bylaws number 2015-14, 15, 16, 17, 18, and 2015-19 be hereby passed and enacted.
All in favor? That's carried. And our business is complete. Adjournment. Next meeting is March 2nd, with the exception of our capital budget meetings. Good. Thanks, everybody.